across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon, welcome to the home. Sorry, that snort was actually a laugh. There's a rare moment when our producer Finn was humorous. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. It is the home of common sense. There's a lot to get through as the Makerfield discussions continue. Reform UK's Robert Kenyon, a self-employed plumber and former army reservist, is mounting a bit of a high-stakes challenge, but it's a good challenge against Labour's Andy Burnham, leveraging his local roots and populist branding against his rivals. There is some issues around a bit of his social media activity. I don't think he's going to lose any sleep over that, but we'll come to all those points in just a moment. Let me ask you this. Who's going to win this? Serious question. I know it's Route 1. No apology there. Who is going to win the Makerfield by-election? Lines are open now. Also, the Treasury is negotiating with supermarkets to voluntarily freeze essential food prices like eggs, bread and milk. You'd think they'd lob sirloin steak into the list, potentially in exchange for suspending anti-obesity packaging regulations. Can you have both? And the Bank of England forecasts 7% rise in food costs due to global energy and fertiliser issues. It's going to be a bit tricky out there, although inflation did surprisingly come down a little bit. And a new pilot programme will stop GPs from issuing sick notes, instead referring workers to social prescribers to address high numbers of not fit for work declarations that currently lack employment support. This whole area is in fact, it's a crime scene, frankly, what is going on over there. Lots to get through. 0344 499 1000. So, straightforward question. The Makerfield by-election. Let me put it like this. It couldn't be simpler. Who is going to win? It's rapidly becoming the sort of by-election that feels almost as exciting as a general election. Let's have a listen to at least three of the candidates. This is, firstly, the man you know well. He is currently the Mayor of Greater Manchester. His name is Andy Burnham.
It was growing up in and around these streets that I saw what Thatcher's government did to places like this, the deindustrialisation, the draining away of economic, social and political power. It left places like Makerfield behind, and Britain has been on that path for the last 40 years.
Yeah, we felt like that in Ashford, in Kent, by the way. It wasn't a northern thing, Andy, but he used to live in a shoebox, don't you know? He's Andy Burnham, the Labour candidate. Robert Kenyon is standing for Reform UK.
No, they might know that.
Started off well. And for Restore Britain, their candidate, Rebecca Shepherd.
I would say a common sense party with a trustworthy leader who cares about his people, his constituents, doesn't try and lie about anything and just really wants the best for the people. And that's it, isn't it? That's all we want. We just want to be recognised. We want us as British people to be put first.
100%. Vote Restore Britain.
Restore Britain.
Well done.
She's Rebecca Shepherd. We're yet to hear declarations from the Lib Dems or the Greens as to who their candidate is likely to be. We do know, however, the monster raving loony party have announced Howling Lord Hope as the almost done deal, isn't it? If you were the others, you'd just go, no, it's not even worth the challenge. Not now Howling Hope is on the case. He's going to hoover up the place, is Howling Hope. Monster raving loonies have declared before the Greens or the Lib Dems in terms of who their candidate might be. So Labour's civil war, essentially disguised as a constitutional contest. Yes, Reform showcasing some genuine working-class rebellion while simultaneously discovering that candidates really should delete their social media history before nomination papers go in. That said, I can't find anything that is so extreme that it would warrant concern, but we'll come back to that point in a moment. Labour's Andy Burnham arrives like a man auditioning for both the local MP and the Prime Minister at the same time. Not quite sure which one he is. Which hat do I put on? You know those quick change artists that you see? And they're amazing in seconds. Wow, he was a milkman, now he's a policeman. How did he do that? This is Andy changing cloth cap for a nice pinstripe suit at the dispatch box. He's playing both cards. We know what he's up to. Reform's Robert Kenyon is being sold as the plucky plumber, although that branding might become slightly harder to sustain once those old social media posts resurfaced, appearing to show him questioning vaccines and mingling with various online undesirables. Again, we'll come back to that point. Then there's Restore Britain. Their candidate is Rebecca Shepherd, proof that the British right really can split itself into ever more smaller fragments, like a politically unstable atom. Are Restore, here's a question, are Restore a genuine threat to reform? Potentially, yes, but not because they'll win, but because they could siphon off precisely that angry, anti-establishment vote that vote reform needs to overtake Labour. They won't win it, I don't imagine, but they could absolutely muller the potential of a reform win. Reform supporters are already deeply irritated by this. If you look at some of the online comments, it is extraordinary. There is natural disquiet. But it's an election. Anybody can stand. As for the Greens, are they threatening Labour? Probably not. It's not a Gorton by-election. Makerfield feels culturally closer to reform territory than the kind of radicalism that we've seen elsewhere. The Greens may annoy Labour, but reform can actually hurt them. And that's true. That's the real panic beneath the campaign slogans. So you have, excuse me, that join the ticket. Based on what we know, based on everything about the mood music of this area, who do you think? I know this is early doors. It's going to be on June the 18th? June the 18th, I think. Who's going to win? Who's going to win that by-election? Because it will be significant, massively significant for Labour, of course. 0344 499 1000. Do old social media posts matter anymore? If you look closely at anyone's account, I'm sure you can find something that's maybe not the most desirable post, one that they wouldn't necessarily post today. And are you a Restore Britain supporter? How do you feel about your chances, your candidate's chances, and how much harm that could do to Reform UK? Chloe Dobbs is with us, political commentator of some note, I should add. Hello, Chloe Dobbs.
Thank you. Hope it's good notes rather than bad notes.
Always good notes. Howling Lord Hope, everybody's
That's a great name.
Political.
That's a great name.
Well,
I'd vote for him just for the name.
Because you had the guy that's screaming Lord Such, of course. He was the man that started, I think, the Monster Raving Loony Party.
Okay.
I don't know, did he start it? But he was the sort of the most famous
And did he
one.
legally change his name to that?
He might have done.
Because presumably to have your name on the ballot paper is you can't just have a completely fake name.
I think that's probably true. But
he probably had to pay to have his name legally. Maybe his passport says that.
I think it could do.
Imagine the looks when you go to immigration.
Excuse me,
really?
Howling, Howling. You left your bag here. Howling Lord Hope. But he's full of hope, apparently, this man. So we can mess around with this a bit at this stage. Because as we get towards the election, we won't be able to say this kind of stuff because the laws of the land in this country are all a little bit North Korean and they preclude us from getting too sort of up close and personal in our opinions of the candidates. Based on what you're looking at, Chloe, objectively, I know where your politics are, but objectively, who's going to win that by-election?
I think that Andy Burnham has the biggest chance, and I wasn't saying that a few days ago, because if you look at the results in the local elections, I mean, the whole place, all of the council wards in the Makerfield area, they were all turquoise, very reform, also quite a pro Leave area, 65% there voting Leave, and Andy Burnham has previously said that he would like to rejoin the EU at some point in his lifetime. But what flipped it for me was this this forecast that came out from Election Maps UK that said without Andy Burnham as the candidate, Reform would be expected to win by a landslide, getting nearly double the number of votes of Labour Party. But with Andy Burnham, they forecast that Labour would get 45% of the vote and Reform 42% of the vote, and Andy Burnham would just get it, which suggests that he would make a big difference despite his Remain-leaning tendencies. The way that they calculated that was off the basis of what they asked people after the Gorton and Denton by-election. How would you have voted if Andy Burnham was the candidate? And then they changed the results to reflect the fact that there's a difference in the Leave versus Remain proportions between those two constituencies. And so there are a lot of... and then there have been other odds checkers coming out saying that Andy Burnham, I think one said he's got a 62% chance of winning whereas Reform are on 35%. I mean, it's still to play for. I mean, speaking of the Gorton and Denton by-election, I mean, up until the results came out, everyone was saying, you know, nobody knows, is it going to be Labour, is it going to be Greens, or is it going to be Reform?
What about this point of social media posts? Because I was almost waiting for this to happen a couple of days ago. I thought someone's going to have a little look, and I think the Robert Kenyon, I think, took his X post down. There's a lot of people online saying he was kicked off. No, he wasn't. I think he just took it down because he knew that if you're going to take a look at stuff I've written over 10 years, then you could make all sorts of things out of anything. His allegiance, or the fact that he was friends on Facebook with somebody who was, I mean, really, is that where we've got to? That he had a Facebook free? You know, when I don't do Facebook anymore. We all did it for about half an hour, and now it's only something your nan does. But when I did it, you know, people say, "Can I be?" You just click yes, yes, yes. You know, you don't always.
Yeah, I've often had times where I've accidentally been friends with someone on Facebook and not really been completely sure who they are, and then deleted them later.
Well, when we were doing it, we had an account that was kind of almost like for the show, as it were.
Yeah.
So we clicked yes to everybody. So God knows who's on there. I'll have to have a look myself now.
Yeah, I mean, look, if I don't know what his posts are that he deleted. Of course, if it emerges that they are absolutely horrendous, then okay, maybe there are questions to be asked about his character. But first of all, A, people change their opinions over time. B, what is socially acceptable to say? You know, jokes that you could say maybe 20 years ago might not be acceptable now, which perhaps reflected by the fact that Little Britain, for example, used to be a super popular show, and now it's been taken off the internet, for example. And also, I mean, when we
funny in itself. We could do a whole show on
if
that.
I was going to run as a candidate, I probably would go through my old posts and delete embarrassing things and whatnot. And to be honest, it probably wouldn't be racist tweets and Facebook posts. It'd probably be pictures of me when I was younger using the funny like photo booth on the Mac when it first came out.
Yeah, can you remember your first tweet? Because about 5 years ago, I think I scrolled back. Because I don't really do Twitter now. I mean, it's there, but I very rarely post, or, you know, sometimes I'll acknowledge that someone sent something that's nice or whatever. But I remember about 5 years ago scrolling to see what my first post was. And I think I found it, and I can't now remember what it was. It was something ridiculous, like, oh, we're on air tonight at 10 o'clock, or something of that nature. And, like, very few people, relatively speaking, were actively using it at the time.
Yeah.
But I couldn't be bothered to go back now.
You can't find any of my first tweets because speaking of X accounts that have been suspended, I lost my original X account.
Did you?
And this happened at the time when Elon Musk was taking over X, and every single person that works there in support was all being fired or not turning up to work. And so I went to their London headquarters in Piccadilly Circus and was trying to give them letters and whatnot to be like, please, someone answer me, give me my account back, because nobody
So
would
they
answer
just
me.
deleted your account?
So, well, it may still be suspended, and if I one day ever manage to get hold of someone, I might get it back. But in the meantime, I've created another account. But you can never see my original post. But when it was still up, when I first started doing commentary, I didn't really use X at all. And then a friend said to me, Chloe, I think you should go through some of your old tweets and delete them, because it was all stuff from when I was like, you know, a 13-year-old of like, just, I don't know if you remember the Willy Wonka meme trend, and it was just all of these like Wonka memes and hilarious posts which were not very professional at all. So it's possibly a good thing that I lost my old Twitter account.
You're not going to end up in court, are you, for a dodgy Wonka
You don't
meme?
know in this day and age. 30 people arrested a day for online posts, Ian, in this country. So,
but then it depends on what you've written, doesn't it? If you've written, I want, you know, let's go and kill the man at number
let's kill the
78,
Oompa Loompas,
you know, or kill the Oompa Loompas. You know. Unbelievable. So there is that angle. What about the Restore Britain angle? How much of a threat are they to reform?
They are not a threat. They are a very small party. They'll get maybe Rupert will probably win his seat again at the next general election. He seems to be quite. They'll win things like some council seats and whatnot. But the reality is, Reform is the party that has made a huge concerted effort to go from being a tiny party where it seemed almost completely against all odds that they could be leading the polls at any point, to putting so much work into growing the party, opening up all these branches, getting stuff. It was a huge effort to do that. The idea that some other party can come up and just do the same and take over Reform is for the birds. But it will, on elections where it is potentially really close, like this one might be, they might just take enough of the vote away from reform to tip it into Labour's favour. And so I don't think that they should be fielding a candidate, to be honest, because I think that if they, you know, they should be able to look at the situation and see if we want a party on the right to win this seat rather than a party on the left that is pro-Remain, then we should stand back. The Tories were asked, you know, will you stand aside and not put a candidate in, but they said that they are going to. I mean, it is possible that you'll have parties will sometimes they'll put forward candidates just so there's a name on the ballot paper, but then they choose not to actively bother to campaign. So it'll be interesting to see how much effort the Tories put into this by-election, but I don't think the polling suggests that they've got a chance of winning it. So,
few questions on the back of that. Firstly, straightforward question, Route 1 question. Who is going to win the Makerfield by-election? 0344 499 1000. What is your assessment of the events and who's standing and who stands the greatest chance of walking away victorious? Secondly, the thing about social media posts. How do you feel about that? How bad would it have to be before you would unendorse a candidate or not vote for a candidate? Are we losing our minds over social media? And thirdly, are you a supporter of Restore Britain? Do you go restore rather than reform? How do you rate your chances? More broadly, how do you rate your chances going forward? But specifically on this by-election, do you think your party can... I don't mean your party, I wonder if they'll be standing as well. That's a whole other party. Restore Britain, can they dent, can they put a kink into the perm, if you like, of Reform UK? Thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut.
Bob Odenkirk! Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely. I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1?
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
21 minutes after 1 o'clock here on Talk. Chloe Dobbs is with us, and thank goodness for that. Chloe is like the hors d'oeuvre to summer, because, of course, after today, Chloe, it's going to be like Saint-Tropez.
Are you finally agreeing that it's summertime now? Every time it's sunny, I'm like, it's summer, and he's like, no, it's winter.
Well, it is.
Stop being so optimistic and happy.
Still
just always bringing the mood music down.
We are one toe dipped out of winter at the moment, so we're only just there. But you know what the UK is like. We've got this 3 or 4 days now. It started off. It's quite exciting at the beginning of the week. It was like we had 2 days of sunshine, and then the next day, 3 days, and now 4. I think there's 5 now.
Something like that.
Average temperature around about 26 degrees. I'm totally up for that, even though I'm going to be painting my little boy's bedroom during much of this. Nonetheless, it's great. I love it. It does put people...
The beer gardens will be buzzing.
I mean, I'm doing the breakfast show next week, so I can't do too much in the beer garden. But here's the thing. The week after, it'll be 8 degrees and pouring down. And that's the problem with the UK.
You know what they say? You can't enjoy the sunshine without a little rain.
Do they?
Have you never heard that?
Well, I mean, kind of makes sense. I've never... Is it like a sort of Churchillian quote or something? Did Gandhi say it?
It's traditional British...
Was it JFK on his deathbed?
I don't know who that originally came from. I think it's just it's a British saying.
Well, it does make sense. Let's talk about supermarkets. Supermarkets may be asked to freeze prices of milk, eggs and bread. They've got this so wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think the supermarkets are pretty peeved off about this, and that it seems too little too late. And what the government is basically asking them to do is, rather than forcing a price cap on them, like the SNP are suggesting might happen in Scotland, but here they're trying to make it voluntary in exchange for some deregulation. But the supermarkets are saying, yeah, our prices have been higher. We've been struggling for so long to keep prices down because we've had this sky-high regulation for so long and you've done nothing about it. And then when you're absolutely desperate for our help, now you're suggesting that you might, you know, shave off some of the edges on the absurd amount of regulation that we're facing. And it's the government's approach at the moment is do policies that make things more expensive and then try and offer some taxpayer cash to try and mediate the bad effects of the policy that was our fault. So yes, things like the oil price with regards to the Strait of Hormuz chaos is one driving factor because of this, but another huge reason why supermarkets, hospitality, etc. Are having to put prices up is because of the big hikes in taxes, in the minimum wage. These are sectors where the minimum wage, you know, a lot of their staff are on minimum wage, so a small increase makes a huge impact to their outgoings. And then rather than say, oh, we're not going to hike the minimum wage, they say, we'll just offer some money. What are you laughing at?
Sorry.
Ian's beside himself. What has someone texted?
Someone's text. So this is not. You were just going brilliant. You were going great guns, and I was agreeing with every word you were saying.
You weren't listening.
When I came through, and what was funny, not just what he said, it was funny to watch Finn clock me see that it was funny. Because Finn. Anyway, Aubrey in Upminster says, I can't see why they're calling Reform UK racist when they're putting up a Kenyan for the Makerfield by-election. It's a very good point, isn't it? It's a really good point, Aubrey.
Which way did she spell Kenyan?
The surname of the Reform candidate, which is the way you would spell Kenyan. It was from Aubrey, not Audrey. Aubrey's a bloke, isn't it? Aubrey.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I thought you said Audrey.
Yes.
Aubrey's a boy's name, right? I think so. It's quite a rare name.
You don't meet many Aubreys.
You know there is a difference between an O and an A in Kenyan. Kenya, the country, has an A on the end. So a Kenyan would be A-N. Whereas the Reform candidate is O-N.
Oh, interesting. No, interestingly, Kenyan is O, right?
For the candidate?
No, for the country.
No.
No, the country is A. Kenya with an N on the end, right?
Yeah. A-N.
Apparently he did spell it right, and then Finn's changed it.
What? Oh.
I don't understand.
How confusing.
It doesn't really matter, does it?
Moving on. Onto the news.
Moving on. Listen, this thing about food. So in exchange, this is in exchange for saying to the supermarket, you've got to freeze eggs, milk and bread. This is the proposal. In exchange, the government may suspend anti-obesity packaging regulations, which are going to cost businesses apparently 165 million quid annually. I don't understand any of that. I don't know why you'd have to suspend it. If they're selling stuff that's that bad for you, they shouldn't be selling it in the first place. That's another story. However, why would it cost 165 million?
Good luck. I'd say good luck stopping supermarkets from selling bad food.
If you're selling stuff that gives you cancer, I would say
most of the stuff in the supermarket gives you cancer. It's only if you go to the periphery and go down the fruit and vegetable aisle that you're not going to get cancer. Pretty much everything you eat is full of processed rubbish.
Do you know what we should do?
That will give you cancer. But the reality is, is that I'm not sure that all these things like, oh, here's a Mars bar, but at least it's got a traffic light system on it, is going to stop people from eating bad food. Yeah. I think a lot of the time people know that the food that they're eating is bad, with the exception of there is food where, for example, you have some like ultra-processed milkshake. This is clearly rubbish, but it says 20 grams of protein on the outside, and people go, oh yeah, that's a health drink, I'm going to have that when I come out the gym and it's going to make my muscles big.
Or it says no added sugar, which is another
Which means that they filled it with fat instead, and also a bunch of
other stuff.
Yeah, but I'm not sure how much difference.
A meat pie in a sealed tin, and the sell-by date is 2037, then I would suggest you don't go anywhere near it.
Yeah.
But it's legal.
Stay on the perimeter of the supermarket.
Here's what we should do, okay? This is, and I am ahead of the game on this one. When people meet me, Chloe, they have two very instant responses. First one, he's a bit tasty. Second one, he's clearly one of our great thinkers.
Right.
And here's evidence. Pasta. OK? Pasta should... forget the Great British Energy Company. We need the Great British Pasta Company. We should have pasta almost on tap in the streets. You can just go and get as much pasta as you like. It will be free. There'll also be...
Who's
you know,
gonna pay for that?
you get water fountains in the street. We'll have pasta sauce fountains. So you get your pasta, scoop up a dish of... Pasta costs naffle, OK? It's the cheapest thing ever. Get it going. At least it's got some healthy properties. If they're serious
it's just
about
flour
health...
and water.
There you go. It's cheap. It's cheap.
Yeah,
but
what's the healthy property? It's flour and water.
It's a better form of carb than a potato, put it that
no,
way.
absolutely not. I completely disagree with that. You're talking about a refined grain
you love
compared
potatoes.
with something that comes out of the ground. I do love potatoes.
I'm telling you... But
one thing I will say is that pasta... white pasta actually digests slower than brown bread because if you
whole grain
if you have pasta, even if it's white, because it's like smushed together, it's harder for the enzymes that break it down to get inside, whereas bread, it's full of loads of holes and all the enzymes can get inside and break it down really quickly, so you get more of a glucose spike and a crash with bread, even if it's brown bread, because it's got so many holes in it compared to white pasta. So pasta much better than bread, but I would completely disagree with you on the potatoes comparison.
It's like Michael Mosley just came back into the studio, isn't it? But my point is that if they were really serious about, you know, it's not going to happen with a bit of... The milk, eggs, bread, supermarkets don't make a lot of money on those things. They're often lost leaders anyway because it gets
well, the healthiest things are the ones that don't make... There's not really... you can't really have a unique selling point for broccoli, other than this one's organic versus this one's not. So you're never going to have a big profit margin, which is why they always push all the unhealthy food, because that's where the big profit margins are.
At least with pasta, you can get a meal out of it relatively cheaply, which was kind of my overarching point.
It is a cheap option.
Bit of cheese on the top, bit of...
now you're making it unhealthy.
You can lob some pesto in there as well. We've got a hypothetical... This is from the more in common people. Hypothetical Westminster voting intention with Andy Burnham as Labour leader.
Ooh,
OK, ready for this?
Exciting. Go for it.
Labour 30% plus 8. Reform 27% minus 2. Conservatives 20% plus 1. Lib Dems 11% minus 2. Greens 7% minus 4. Others 2% minus 1. So that's the more in common people. Do you know much about the more in common people?
I have seen a lot of their polls.
I have. I try to work out who they are, what they're kind of... Do they have an allegiance in any way, more in common? I don't know. Either way.
I'm not sure.
So it's hypothetical Westminster voting intentions. Andy Burnham as Labour leader. Maybe this poll was possibly commissioned by Andy Burnham. I don't know.
I don't know.
That would make sense.
That's quite something to see Labour ahead of Reform, and that will really help Andy's popularity if he can say, I'm the only person that can save the Labour Party and stop us giving the keys to Reform at the next election. But what I expect is that whilst he's at the moment just got some, cool, flashy campaign video, he's not actually had to be in Parliament, try to implement things, realise there's no money and mess it up. Things look nice and rosy, but if he's in government for say 2 years or something like that before 2-3 years before the next general election, and at that point he's done what the Labour Party have already done the past 2 years, which is promised everything and then not been able to deliver it, which is probably what will happen, then I think that 30% will quickly wind down to a lower number and Reform will still end up ahead.
OK. Plans, very finally, we've got to be quick on this, Chloe. Plans to hike fuel duty have been paused. Rachel Reeves set out her budget, of course, last autumn, that she would gradually bring an end to that temporary 5p cut in fuel duty, which was introduced back in 2022. They've now said that they are going to pause that potential hike, but only to the end of the year, as I understand it. I mean, it doesn't touch the sides, really. I mean, there's many bigger ways you could look at fuel and the cost of it. I know that tomorrow there's going to be Howard Cox from Fair Fuel UK, you will be aware, has done some incredible work over years on this. And they've got a petition going. It's backed by a whole lot of MPs that are going to be there as well. So they're meeting at 10 a.m. tomorrow, Thursday 21st. You can look up the details. They've got a 150,000 signature petition urging Rachel Reeves to cut fuel duty immediately amid the cost of living crisis. 40 other countries have already done this since the conflict in Iran began. And they've got another 3,000 supporters over the past 36 hours. This is massive. Okay, it's not getting the big headlines it should be getting. Howard's done incredible work on this. It continues. They're asking for this freeze to be for the remainder of this Parliament.
I mean, that would be fantastic if they're able to do that. Now, Starmer and Reeves are saying, the only reason why we've U-turned slightly on this is because of the changing circumstances with the Iran war, and I'm sure that those changing circumstances have played into it. But I think what a lot of the opposition parties are all saying is this is down to us. Reform are saying this is because we have, for example, done stints where we've taken over petrol stations, and then of course you've got the work of Howard. You've had the Conservatives talking about this for some time as well. But the point that Kemi Badenoch was making at PMQs today to Keir Starmer is yes, you can cut fuel duty for a little while, but your MPs have all just voted to stop new licences in the North Sea, which is what we desperately need for the long run. So it seems like a little bit of short-term alleviation, a little prize that Labour can offer us to try and quell the discontent for a little while amongst the electorate. But it's not really a long-term vision, and cutting it for the rest of Parliament and allowing new oil licences in the North Sea would be more of a long-term strategy.
Indeed. Well, that petition will be handed in tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. at the Treasury. You can also sign that, fairfueluk.com, or even ask your own MP to sign it as well, which gives it a little bit more taters when it comes to notoriety and profile, as it were. Chloe, we only talked about 2 things, and half of that was pasta. But you were
That's
great.
what everyone wants to hear about.
Chloe Dobbs with us on the programme.
Pasta or potatoes, that's what everyone will message
about. We will continue next time you're on with the next week. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Brian in Sheffield has clarified a notable quotation that Chloe was kind of paraphrasing about, you've got to take a bit of rain with the sun or something. Brian says it was Dolly Parton. There was me looking for Gandhi or Churchill. Turns out it was Dolly Parton. Almost. If you want to enjoy the rainbow, you have to put up with the rain. And as David Brent said, people think she was just a big pair of boobs. Or words to that effect. He did. Love it. Brian, thank you for that. Rob in Burnley says, I think Reform can win the seat, but Nigel has to do so far more publicly in regards to clearing up this 5 million donation. The floating voters that are willing to take Reform seriously won't need much of an excuse to go none of the above. That's true. There is, I mean, the 5 million thing has been slightly overshadowed by lots of other... I mean, look, personally, and I've said this about other politicians, I was not that... I mean, if somebody's the Prime Minister, I have a slightly different assessment, perhaps, of what they're doing at the time, whether it's wallpaper or who's buying your glasses and your suits, etc. But if somebody's giving you money... Look, if it was the Chinese government, I might have a problem. But I've always been reasonably relaxed, sort of under the caption of there are bigger things going on. But it's an awkward look. I get that. And I think, understandably, people who are often Reform supporters are saying, look, if this was Keir Starmer, we would be really going for him, if it was Kemi Baden or whatever. But we'll see how that one pans out. I think Nigel has largely addressed it, but I stand to be corrected. We'll speak to Adam Cherry, editorial director of Guido Fawkes, shortly. First, Gwaine Towler, board member of Reform UK. Reference all things Makerfield related. Gwaine, good to see you again. This is interesting, isn't it? Because you've got a local guy up there, and he's a plumber. Seems to be a bit of a thing in by-elections now, doesn't it? If you're a plumber, you might end up in Westminster. The Greens did it. Can Reform UK do it?
Well, of course we can. I've known Rob for a number of years now. He stood for us back in 24, where he did a fantastic job in getting 32%, when the average for Reform across the country, even with Nigel, was only 14%. So this is somebody who's been there. He's walked the walk, talked the walk, talk. He's part of who we are. He's not somebody who's rocked up recently. He's done it. He's been there. He was elected the other week as a local councillor in Makerfield. He is hefted to that part of the world. And I was talking to him on Friday, and I can't. What I just said, oh, good luck with this one. And he got back to me and went, what happens next? And I said, well, square your friends away, square your family away, make sure they're up for it, because it's going to be hard work for the next few weeks. But if you pull this off, your name's going to be in the history books forever.
Yeah.
That's how important this election
is. It really is. I mean, this is a deciding factor.
Paragraph in any future history of British politics.
Correct. Yes, almost the moment that the government were fully toppled, the kind of final piece of the puzzle.
Well, there's a lovely line at an event yesterday with Robert Jenrick, and he was going on about how Andy Burnham is perceived to be the king of the North, at least self-perceived to be the king of the North. And Jenrick's comment was, well, maybe king of Norman Shore North. After all, he spent 16 years in Westminster.
Yeah, that certainly does work. Listen, I mean, there's the usual thing has happened, which we knew would happen, and the Metro did almost the worst piece of journalism I think I've ever read on something like this, because they were looking into...
Oh, come on, you've read lots of bad bits of journalism.
We have indeed, but this was terrible. Well, they were talking essentially about Twitter posts, things that that Robert Kenyon had written 500 years ago, or somebody who might have been a friend.
More stuff that he had either responded to, not so much written himself, it's responses to other people writing.
Well, almost all of the ones I looked at were responses.
Yeah, precisely. And it's a case of, these are people you should never have known existed, because they are evil people, and you should not have responded to evil people. Indeed. Well, I respond to Lib Dems and Labour people all the time.
Oh, well, indeed. I mean, of course, that's what keeps the whole cogwheels turning of discourse and debate. What was fascinating is that the piece I was referring to was kind of, had all of these, usual kind of buzzwords thrown in, like hard right, extreme views, and then I kept scrolling down, waiting to find the, I thought it's going to be here in a minute, it's going to be here in a minute, and it really wasn't there.
The killing of the firstborn?
Yes, indeed, yes.
Didn't he? No, no.
That's what I thought I was going to find, Gwen.
I know, and it was like, how disappointing. He is a ghastly man. We're being told he is. No, he is a solid, working class, white bloke, hard-working, served his country, served the community, now runs a small business with knowledge of how all the legislation and regulations causes so much trouble for people who are entrepreneurs and getting on with life. He's got all that. But, hey, guess what? He's not a social worker. He's not polished. He's not done up like a politician of 15, 20 years in the game. So he's not going to be absolutely down the line perfect, the sort of thing that wouldn't frighten a green-haired primary school teacher in Islington. I don't think people want every person in politics to be that style of person. And good. And he doesn't look like he's dressed up for Sunday school.
Well, indeed. Absolutely right. And he's also not auditioning to be the Prime Minister, which,
And he's not auditioning to be some woke grandee.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely bang on. What about, Gwaine, this point about Restore? They were very quick to not just announce a candidate, but I think they were out there campaigning, even like a week ago or something. How much of a threat are Restore to Reform?
Restore are standing. They have every right to. I think they're foolish, but hey, I mean, everybody's allowed to stand. I mean, it's democracy and politics. I also suspect, if you look at what happened in Gorton and Denton, where a locally very popular, locally born man stood for Advance, it got 9% in the mayoral elections 2 years previously, and his vote vanished. Because I think the good people of Makerfield, as they did in Gorton and Denton, will look at the reality and say, this is a two-horse race. We either have the coronation of somebody who believes that men can go into ladies' loos, or the coronation of somebody who doesn't really believe in the market, does want to join rejoin the EU, or we have this local guy who's solid and one of us. So, yes, of course, everybody have the right. The Greens have the right to stand. The Tories, who will be down at 2 or 3%, will have the right to stand. Even Ed Davey will probably have a candidate. But the fact is, when it comes down to it, I think you don't have to ask people to tactically vote. I think people aren't dumb. They will look at it and go, which is the vote that I can rely on to make the difference I want to make. So stand away, campaign away, do what you will. I don't think it's going to make that much difference. But Connor Tomlinson has basically said our candidate's excellent. So he's not wrong. So I am sanguine. But of course, we're in a democracy. No party owns anybody's vote. I don't own anybody's vote apart from my own. And some nights I'm not entirely sure I know that. So,
love it. Gwaine, great to speak to you again as ever. Thank you, Gwaine Towler, board member for Reform UK, political strategist. I think I can call him that as well. Let's get a word from Adam Cherry, editorial director at Guido Fawkes. Adam, how are you doing?
Good afternoon, Ian. Very good.
Nice to have you with us. Nice to see you again. Just briefly, before we crack on, this hypothetical Westminster voting intention thing, which has come from the more in common people, you might be able to shine some light on to who they are, puts Labour set to win, assuming that Andy Burnham is Labour leader. What do you make of that?
Yeah, a 3-point lead for Labour. I mean, this is the Burnham bounce that people in SW1 talk about. I think it's probably accurate. I think he has the best chance of doing it for anyone in Labour. That's why all the MPs want him to head back down to Westminster. The question is, can he get there in the first place? I don't think it's nailed on necessarily that he wins that by-election at all. Yes, he's still the odds-on favourite, just about, maybe 65% chance according to the bookies as of yesterday. But he's got a serious threat from Reform. You just had Gwaine Towler on there talking about their campaign. And, this morning we published on Guido Fawkes the first video ad from Reform designed for the constituency, targeting the constituents of Makerfield. And you see their strategy, which is the David versus Goliath, in their words, the David versus Goliath approach. So, obviously Burnham's appeal, at least to Westminster folks, is that he's an outsider, he's anti-establishment, and Reform's game plan is to try and dismantle that by saying, no, actually, this guy was deeply embedded in New Labour. Of course, he was even the Secretary of State under Gordon Brown, U-turn on Brexit, or rather certainly on the second referendum, freedom of movement, even fiscal rules in the last few days. So trying to wipe the sheen off of this man. As you say, look, that poll is interesting. It's not actually necessarily surprising. I do also think, as we said a few days ago, there may well be an early general election if Andy Burnham is successful in the by-election and subsequently becoming Prime Minister, which would be inevitable if he does win that by-election, by the way. Look, it would be in Andy Burnham's interest, I think, one, to try and claim his own mandate, given that he's going to want to rip up the manifesto even more than Starmer and Reeves already have. It wasn't even in Parliament when it was written, of course. There may well be a fiscal event that forces him to do so, a bond market meltdown. And he's going to want to try and kneecap Reform, because the polling will suggest that, at least for the honeymoon stage, however long that may well be, and I know we're getting deep into hypotheticals here, he's going to want to capitalise on it. So, of course, there are a lot of unknowns at the moment, and you can really get your crystal ball out and have some fun, but it is certainly interesting. And I'm like I said, I'm not necessarily surprised that polling suggested there's a bit of a bounce for him, given what we've seen so far throughout this campaign.
Indeed, and what you said there is quite right, Adam, isn't it? I mean, look, a manifesto is it's not a legal document, but it's one that people reasonably expect to be carried out. However, if you can claim exceptional circumstances, external factors and all the rest of it, and a new leader, I suppose you could construct a sort of half-assed argument that you've got a right to do it.
Yeah, but he's going to want his own mandate, and the MPs, they're going to be really difficult to, particularly on the point of whether they run into fiscal trouble, which is, if you've got Ed Miliband as a chancellor, let's not rule that out. Then, is he going to have to try and force his MPs to vote for very unpopular measures just to keep the bond markets happy, so to speak? Well, they're going to be deeply reluctant to do that. So, like I said, there are many factors that would contribute to it, but don't rule it out. Certainly within 2027, I think the odds of going all the way to 29 are lengthening. To be honest, look, there's no way Starmer's staying. Whoever comes next, whether it's Burnham or whoever else. So don't discount it. Is all I'm saying. It's very early days, but do not discount it. Given what we're discussing today, the markets, the MPs, and again his own mandate being absolutely crucial to this. Not being in the Commons at all and wanting to present his own. What does he stand for? We don't know. It's it's absolutely essential to it, I think.
What do you sense then if Andy Burnham didn't do it and Reform were to romp home on this one? Then of course eyes focus back onto Westminster. West Streeting mounting this leadership challenge. All the suggestions say that Starmer would beat West Streeting, but of course it wouldn't just be the two of them, because then you start to throw people like Rayner into the mix, even Ed Miliband into the mix. So would it be a 4-horse race, a 5, 6? What are you hearing?
I mean, if Burnham loses, Starmer is still facing a leadership challenge. Then you get into really interesting territory, because the PLP will go absolutely mental. They'll want to get him out as soon as possible. Who do you replace him with? I don't know, or neither do they. Once you then take that to the Labour membership, the broader party membership, there was polling in the last couple of days that said really Burnham is the only one who can definitely beat him. I think the other ones, Starmer came out second against those in head-to-head scenarios. So then, we're in really headless chicken territory there. I don't know what the answer is. I cannot see any scenario where Starmer stays on, because his authority is already been zapped to about 0 as it is. But whether it's Miliband, whether it's Rayner, I don't think the PLP have, the Labour Party MPs have much faith in her. I would guess, thinking out loud, it would probably be Miliband, probably.
Wow.
But again,
can't wait. Bring it on. Lots of copy. Lots of copy in that, though, isn't there? So, just a very final point. Then back to where we began on this. Then, Adam, that by-election, Restore Britain. Can they make any serious indentations into the sort of centre-right part of this campaign? Will Reform UK be worried?
I think they can do some damage. Yeah, in a by-election like this, where every vote matters under first past the post, a few votes here and a few votes there can make a serious difference. You had Gawain saying just a few moments ago they got 30% last time, Reform. With 3 parties on the right this time, okay, it's always kind of an afterthought, but they're nonetheless going to stand for some reason. So it could make a difference. I'm going to go to Makerfield myself in the next week or two, and it's going to be one of the questions I ask, because I don't think you could ignore Restore. There's no chance they're going to win the seat, but they can certainly make an impression. And if they secure 5 to 8% of the vote, that could swing things. That could be the difference, couldn't it? Adam, great to see you again. Thank you. We will speak soon. Adam Cherry, editorial director at Guido Fawkes. Check out the website and the posts and the newsletter and all the various bits that come with it, including podcasts and the like. Thank you to Adam. Thank you to Gwaine Towler as well. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. I am genuinely intrigued by that Restore Britain factor in all of this. If you're a Restore supporter, and I know there are Restore supporters who've called us on many occasions for many sort of associated subjects. I'd love to hear from you. What is your take on this? Because it could be your party that put Andy Burnham into Makerfield and therefore number 10. What are your thoughts on that? Does a candidate's social media history matter to you? And the most straightforward question, who's going to win this by-election? 0344 499 1000.
wig.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut.
Bob Odenkirk!
Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air.
Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely.
Go.
I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1?
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This from Suze, who says, "Afternoon, Ian. Rob Kenyon makes Burnham look like an old lefty dinosaur," which he is, of course, says Suze. "I would vote for Kenyon over U-turning Burnham, who would say anything to further his career without any thought for the people he's using." I think Burnham, you talk about skeletons in your closet, they're banging on about Rob Kenyon and, he once responded to somebody on Twitter, or somebody joined his Facebook group who was a bit undesirable. If you want to talk about the greatest crime, I think Andy Burnham's complete U-turns on who he is politically is a much bigger story, from his leadership challenge of Labour in 2010, his leadership challenge in 2015, and his leadership challenge today, where he's worn 3 different hats for all of those. He's a Blairite, he's a Corbynite, now he's a Burnhamite, and we don't quite know what that is. It's a bit of a mixture of the two, because neither one worked on their own, so we'll put the two together and maybe that'll be okay. I mean, it's this kind of weird nonsense. That, to me, is the... If this was about your moral compass and your sincerity and your integrity, then that would, intellectually speaking, be a bigger problem by a country mile than the fact that Rob Kenyon once spoke to a half-wit on Twitter. Any day of the week. This from Mandy in Rainworth, who says, "You can't diss the Fray Bentos tinned pie." In fairness, I didn't mention Fray Bentos, did I? I can't believe Mandy has actually named the pie. The pie does have a court order for anonymity. And Mandy's just gone and said it out loud, OK? I just said a tinned pie. Anyway, yeah, all right, Fray Bentos. She says, "They were my late father's favourite, and I used to be quite partial too. We called them shiny pies because of the shiny, slimy pastry. But I'm beginning to see the problem," says Mandy. It's the sell-by date. Do you know, this is absolutely true. Only about a month ago, I was in Tesco. I actually picked up one of those pies just to look at the sell-by date to confirm that I wasn't going mad. I think it was 2029 or something. I thought, wow, what's in this tin will last for another 3.5 years. Extraordinary. Mark's in Lincolnshire. Mark, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hi there, Ian.
Hello.
Hello. The Makerfield by-election.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm a Restore Britain member. I quite like our candidate. I think she's suitable for the area, campaigning on very much local issues, which I think is quite important for this kind of a by-election for these kind of people, really, because they're similar to myself, they're just working-class people. And at the end of the day, these are the kind of things we care about. What I find quite disheartening with this, and just in general, really, from the general attitude of Reform supporters, really, is this whole notion of splitting the vote. As you had a guest on not too long ago there, who was basically saying the same thing that I say. Really, nobody owns my vote.
That's fair.
We have these.
That's
we
totally
have
fair enough.
Parties. We have these political parties, and you see, the purpose of a political party, if you actually look at the definition, is that they share, similarities in an ideology. They unite, they create a party, and they stand in these things called elections.
Yeah. Is there a, but it's so nuanced, this little I say little, it's growing, but this, I don't mean little as in a precise description. This corner of politics, this sort of centre-right corner that has in it, clearly at the front in terms of, at the moment, electoral success, will be Reform. You've got Restore there, did some business over there in the council elections, and then you've got Advance. This specific by-election, would it not be helpful and take the Tories out of this because they don't count in the sense of this, would it not be desirable if just one of them stood?
No, not at all. I think that's... If you're going to go down that route, then my initial response to that would be, well, are you a communist then?
Well, that's true, but this would be tactical rather than you haven't got the right to...
I don't see it as tactical because I don't see that this is going to make any... It's not going to make a blind difference to anything.
Very briefly then, Mark.
If Andy Burnham was to win, say this vote was split, Ian, and Andy Burnham won, and then 6 months, a year down the road, he then becomes Prime Minister. He's not going to whisk us straight back into Europe. He's
no, that's true. But what if he won because the split vote of Restore and Reform? What if he won by 2,000 votes and Restore got 3,000 votes, which would have gone to Reform? Would that not be Restore's fault that Andy Burnham won?
How would it be? At the end of the day, and as I just said, what actual difference is this going to make? Is it going to tip the edge that no longer Labour have a majority in the House?
Well, we'll see, and we'll watch with interest. Popcorn at the ready. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 0344 499 1000. So, what have we got? Well, quite a lot, as it turns out. That by-election, just 4 weeks away, 4 weeks tomorrow, I think it is. And, of course, there is a lot to discuss in that. Reform's candidate, that's Robert Kenyon, a self-employed plumber and former Army reservist, mounting... they say a high-stakes campaign. It is high-stakes in all respects against Labour's Andy Burnham, leveraging his local roots and populist branding against his rival. Despite, though, there's a bit of controversy over some of his past social media activity, although I can't, for absolutely straight face on this, find anything that you would say, oh, my God. Nothing. Details to come. And, of course, your question to you, among many others, who's going to win that by-election? Who do you, as you said, this is a by-election that's looking like it's got the vibes and the feel or the excitement of a general election. And it's just one seat of hundreds. Also this afternoon, the Treasury is negotiating with supermarkets to voluntarily freeze essential food prices like eggs, bread and milk, potentially in exchange for suspending that anti-obesity packaging regulation. This all comes as the Bank of England forecasts a 7% rise in food costs due to global energy and fertiliser issues. It's costing a fat packet down there at Food HQ, it seems. And a new pilot programme will stop GPs from issuing sick notes, instead referring workers to what they call social prescribers to address the high number of not fit for work declarations that currently lack employment support. That's a bit of a mess as well. It's all a mess, frankly. Who's going to sort it out? 0344 499 1000. Is it Andy Burnham? Is he the man that's going to sort it all out and come to the rescue of Labour? I mean, what you do there is you really just change the leader. Do you change much of the fabric? Well, Burnham, if he wins and then becomes Prime Minister, absolutely will change fundamentally. There'll be massive changes for Labour. There will be tax rises at the top because they believe that is the answer to everything. It won't necessarily be the answer to anything. Dan in Bristol says, good afternoon, Ian. There's one politician putting himself before country more than any other, and it's not Keir Starmer, it's Rupert Lowe. Restore will get a couple of thousand votes in the by-election, and that will be enough to cost Reform the win and let Burnham in. And there's the problem. This is extremely frustrating as Restore and Reform agree on almost everything, and Rupert is only doing it because he hates and wants revenge on Nigel. If he was a true British patriot, he would close down Restore Britain immediately for the good of the country. Well, I was just thinking that as I read the first part of Dan's message saying the only politician putting himself before country, before country more than any other, because it's true, isn't it? I mean, this is about a fight with Nigel Farage. There's no doubt about it, I think. Otherwise, you simply wouldn't put somebody in that seat, frankly. And clearly more important to some people at Restore than stopping Andy Burnham becoming Prime Minister and increasing the chances of Labour remaining in power even after 2029. 0344 499 1000. Let's move to this interesting story. The government is pressuring supermarkets to lower consumer costs. While mandatory price caps on staples were rejected, ministers are reportedly pushing for voluntary price freezes on essentials, possibly in exchange for lighter regulation. Let's speak with Dr. Christian Niemitz, who's the editorial director of the IEA. Christian, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. I mean, I don't know what to make of this, really. It does sound very statist when I hear the government talking about instructing, if you like, companies to freeze their prices. What's your initial reaction when you saw this story?
Well, you're exactly right. This is extremely statist. So yes, they call them voluntary price caps, but the mechanism is the same. The idea, whether it's a mandatory or a so-called voluntary price cap, the idea is that things are expensive because supermarkets are somehow profiteering, they're ripping us off. This is completely untrue. Supermarkets are an extremely low margin business because the retail sector, at least in this country, is extremely competitive. Yep. So supermarkets are in competition with one another, and that is what's forcing them to keep prices low. And they are trying to keep them as low as they can because otherwise consumers will go elsewhere.
Indeed. And of course, supermarkets would say not only are the margins low, on those particular products, they're even lower, in fact, often loss-making.
Yes, that would not surprise me. So this is, of course, when we look at profit margins of supermarkets, of the retail sector, they are on average around 3%. About 3% of their turnover is profits. Now, as you say, this is an average. There may well be some products in the supermarket shelves for which this is higher, but that's not going to be bread or eggs or any of the staples. That's going to be some fancy wine or something like that. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that they are not making their profits on the milk and the eggs and the bread. So this is a complete red herring. It is, in fact, government policy which is pushing up consumer prices in a number of ways. For supermarkets specifically, wage bills and energy costs and rents, things like that. That accounts for a much bigger share of consumer prices. Than profit margins, and these are all things that government policy can influence. So they are pushing up prices on the one hand, and then they're shifting the blame on supermarkets, and they are using a policy like this as a gimmick, a signaling device, a way of saying, look, we're doing something. So they've created a large part of the problem in the first place.
Well, indeed. And, you know, if you consider how unfriendly this government is to business, I mean, the evidence is all there. We can talk about employer national insurance as being an obvious example, compulsory minimum wage rises, things like this 165 million quid's worth of anti-obesity packaging where you teach people as if they're children what's bad for you, as if we can't work it out for ourselves. So there's all of those things. And then, the government have the audacity to almost try and play the moral high ground on this one.
Yeah, so they're now framing it in the way that they're saying we will scale back on these so-called anti-obesity measures if you keep prices low. But of course, they should just scrap those anti-obesity measures to begin with. I mean, they have no business, the government should have no business interfering with how many calories people buy and or consume. So we have the information for most products, for most food products and drinks. The calorie content is on the label. We can all work this out. And that's it. I mean, what's the role of the government? If people want to consume more calories than, say, some NHS guidelines says they should, well, that's their business. That should not be the role of the government to try to make us slimmer. I mean, the government should not try to play the fitness trainer of the nation.
Well, they are on a separate story, Christian. They are trying to say they care for motorists now. I find this also quite laughable. Rachel Reeves set out a budget, of course, last autumn and said she would gradually bring an end to that temporary 5p cut in fuel duty. This was introduced about 4 years ago now in 2022. It meant that fuel duty would rise by 1p per litre in September, a further 2p in December, and then finally 2p in March. That's now not going to happen. Not only is this a bit late in the day, it doesn't really touch the sides, does it? I mean, the government do have they take over 50% of tax. We only ever talk about this rise, this sort of small part of it. They've got massive wiggle room. I appreciate you have to get money from other departments, but the idea that this is their only option, this kind of curious 5p thing, is not true. Is it likely to make a difference?
Well, not very much, because the basic problem is that there is just less energy to go around. And yes, you can fiddle around a bit with the tax systems, but that's the basic reality. Because of the geopolitical situation in the Strait of Hormuz, there is just less energy to go around. And I mean, putting fuel duty rises on hold is one thing. What they should really have put on hold, what they should have frozen, is the whole net zero agenda, which drives up energy prices to begin with by, well, limiting the domestic energy supplies that we have closer to home and that we could make use of right now.
On that point, Christian, great to have you on. Thank you. Dr. Christian Niemitz, he's the editorial director at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Over to you. Loads of comment coming through. Barry says, afternoon, Ian. Rupert Lowe is no patriot. He hates being slighted. All he cares about is beating reform, even at the cost of another 5 years of Labour, the next general election. Stuart in Perthshire says, Ian, well, it doesn't say Ian at all. He just says, you're such a he says you're such a scumbag, Ian, like all other Farage sycophants. Do you know what? You sound like my nan when you speak like that. Absolutely wounded. Brian says, good afternoon, Ian. I predict Reform will win Makerfield because they battered Labour in the local elections in that constituency, and the people will know full well a leopard don't change his spots. Burnham is a rejoiner. Fast forward to the contest for PM. When the Mandelson papers come out, Streeting and Starmer are going to get mauled. Well, yeah. I don't know about Streeting, because Streeting's... I don't even know if it will include the fact that Wes Streeting had some text exchange with Peter Mandelson. So did dozens of others. But there is a suggestion today that there will be... I think it was Darren Jones, who's the chief secretary to Keir Starmer, about as close as it gets. I think he said there will be some redactions in there. And, of course, all that does is, like, throw up the kind of flare of caution, doesn't it? Well, what are you redacting? Is this because it's embarrassing for the Prime Minister? Does it go back to that original appointment and how much of that was he warned about? What is it? I've even lost track of what is meant to be in the Mandelson papers or the Mandelson files, as they're calling it. They're, essentially some documents. Where will they be from? Presumably some of them from the Epstein files. Is there anything else we'll see in there. Let's go to Richard in North London. What have you got for us, Richard? Afternoon.
Hey, good to speak to you again. I mean, it's interesting this thing about reform and restore. I mean, the trouble is, what is source for the goose is source for the gander, because of course Nigel's made great play of how he wants to destroy the Conservative Party over the last couple of years. So of course, you know, in a way, he's now getting a sort of dose of his medicine
from restore. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think
is that more curious though, Richard?
I think the bigger problem is
Nigel Farage wanting to destroy the Tories kind of makes more sense in a way. Restore wanting to destroy reform sounds rather personal.
Well, I think the problem is that clearly Farage and Lowe had a fallout, which I think was very unfortunate. And I think the root of the problem, Ian, is that reform have almost tried to be all things to all men. I mean, it's not that long ago that people from reform were sort of, certainly on social media, were in the sort of ballpark of, oh, we've got to get our country back. Now, of course, as they've approached power, they've sort of toned things down quite a lot. And of course, so if you look at social media, lots of their ex-supporters have gone to restore, because they think that reform is just going to be another bunch of Conservatives. But I think the central problem here is, and it's not going to be easy medicine for people to take. But Nigel Farage is running a sort of one-man band. It's still too much about Nigel. We had a big press conference, 2 months ago, when he unveiled Robert Jenrick. But Jenrick's disappeared since then, and so has Suella Braverman. To some extent, the Conservatives have got the same problem, because they're too much about Kemi. But the problem that there is simply not enough good new ideas. And reform's problem, I'll give you two examples. A few weeks ago, they wanted to have an inquiry into the Boris wave, which really is, and then only a couple of weeks ago, they said they were going to put the asylum seeker hotels or the asylum seeker accommodation in areas where people have voted Green. Now, both of those two policies, Ian, are simply the politics of revenge. I mean, it's bordering on childish, and they still don't have enough. And really, to me, they're about 20% of where they've been in terms of policies. There's still not enough, and there's no vision. And if they had more to offer, then of course Rupert Lowe wouldn't be there. But I mean, here's another example. Nigel was going to have an inquiry into the rape gangs. That was only last year, and yet who did the inquiry into the rape gangs? It was Rupert Lowe. So
I mean, he did an inquiry into the rape gangs, but whether that turns out to be significant enough against the backdrop of the bigger inquiry, we will see how it feeds into it. I mean, anyone that's exposing something so bad, you know, deserves to be thanked and congratulated for, obviously. But where it sits in the grander scale will be perhaps the most telling thing.
Yeah, but this is the thing, isn't it? It's all about delivery. And if you're going to be, I mean, here's another. Of course, the biggest example is this issue about the £5 million donation. If Farage is saying we're different, we're taking on a union party, and yet it turns out that
you're absolutely bang on. You're right, and that's the reason why why Keir Starmer taking suits and tickets and glasses was bad. Wasn't because I wouldn't care if Keir Starmer had a new suit and a pair of glasses bought for him and a season ticket for Arsenal. I don't care, but he was the guy that told us we don't do this kind of stuff.
Yes.
So that was the problem. That was his crime, if you like. We will watch with more than a little interest. Richard, thank you very much indeed for that. Paul says, Ian, reform will only win if people vote for them. There's no other way they can win. Do you know, it's that kind of political punditry that we are lacking in this country. I think I'm taking a guess that when Fiona Bruce announces the lineup for Question Time this week, Paul's going to be on there. I can't see it could be any other way. Bruce will veto the guest list to get Paul in, based on that one text. It's true. There is no other way that you can win unless people vote for you. Churchill didn't even get that far in his long career, did he? I think Paul is, having a brief jest, but I love it. Paul, thank you. We're going to take a brief pause. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk!
Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air.
Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely. I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1?
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is a democracy, of course, so you are allowed to stand. If you're Rupert Lowe's Restore, you know, he does have a party. Why would he not want to stand? I think this is more nuanced than, you know, the request that the Tories should stand down, which they won't, because the Tories really can't afford that to be. We are subservient to, you know, the very party they're still hoping. It's a big hope, but they're still hoping to significantly beat at the next election. But Restore could do it without, you know, Restore wouldn't lose too much if they said we're not going to stand in that seat. But as many of you have pointed out, if they hoovered up 2,000 votes, what was the gap between Labour and Reform at the general election? I think Labour got about 36,000 and Reform got about 31,000. So there's a 6,000 difference there. You can see, and this is likely in some respects to be tighter for a number of reasons. We've seen what happened in the council elections, and we've seen how the mood has changed since 2024. So every vote would count, and if Reform find themselves getting 5,000 votes more than they did last time, and Restore get 2,000 votes more, but Burnham wins by 8,000. That's, if Restore weren't, Burnham would have been stopped. So Rupert Lowe's party are not setting out to stop Andy Burnham, they're setting out to win, and I think anyone knows there's no one at a bookmakers that would give you great odds on them not winning. Becca says, if it's a democratic vote, no one should stand aside. Reform supporters are losing their minds over Restore not stepping aside, but Reform didn't in Great Yarmouth, says Becca. That's a fair point. Yeah, and it's a double-edged sword, because I'm not... It is weird. Everybody should be able to stand a little independent... I was only explaining... It's quite curious. Only last night I was telling my little boy about the Monster Raving Loony Party, and then today we get the Monster Raving Loony Party candidate announced for Makerfield, who's a fella called Howling Lord Hope. What if he won? Wouldn't that be weird? That'd be weird, wouldn't it? Howling would go, whoa, whoa, I'm over the moon. I'm over the moon, he would say. He'd be very happy. I've got a feeling he's not going to. But yeah, it's a democracy. Anybody can stand. Isn't that brilliant? What a wonderful world we live in. But there are times when that is tested a little bit, depending on what the overarching political emphasis is. And at the moment, I think most people, reform and restore would be pretty much, as somebody else just said, in massive agreement on nearly everything. There's some fundamentals on immigration and how it would be dealt with. But the broad brush of stuff, it's kind of the same, more or less the same deal. Steve's in Scunthorpe. Steve, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Yeah, one question I'd like to ask is, has anyone asked Andy Burnham why he's standing to be an MP? Has anyone put that question to him?
That's a very good point. It's the most obvious question. And, because he wouldn't be able to go, because I want to represent the people of Makerfield, would he?
No.
That would just be a big lie.
Yeah. So
it's a great point. So we've got Paul the journalist. We've now got you. So you should be on Question Time as well, Steve.
Oh, no, because I was talking to somebody the other day and saying about if you go on Question Time, you're vetted, and then you've got to answer questions, and then you've got to put your question, if you're going to ask the question, beforehand. So there's not much point, is there?
Well,
the questions I want to ask.
It's not that you're vetted, but it would be a rubbish programme if they didn't have a cross-section of questions.
Yeah.
It would take about 8 hours to edit it, because everybody would just be going, I mean, there are moments where you randomly can put your hand up, of course.
Yeah. It's like, but I think some questions might be too difficult for the panel to ask.
Well, that's a great question. Why do you want to be the MP for Makerfield, Mr. Burnham?
Yeah.
Simple as that.
And then follow it up with, well, not to be Prime Minister or to serve at Makerfield,
What? Look, one of them. Who's that fellow on ITV News? Paul Brand, I think it is, isn't it, their political editor? That fella. He could throw that one in. He loves a curveball. Yeah. Lob that in, Paul.
Yeah.
Beth, where are you, Beth? Come on, throw it in there. Ask Mr. Burnham. He could do it. Who's the Sky one? Do they still have one? Do they still exist? I think they do. That is Beth, isn't it? The BBC fella. The one that does an impression of himself. Chris Mason.
Yeah.
Chris, ask the question. We've got it sorted. I love it. Do you know, it's the most simple point, Steve, but no one really asks that. They're asking, what would you do if you become the MP? What are your thoughts on the manifesto? Would you go back into the EU? The most straightforward question would be that.
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I love it. Steve, thank you, mate. Really appreciate that. Steve in Scunthorpe. Don't go away, Kevin, with you in just 1 second. Ben says, supermarkets being asked to freeze price increases, landlords being told to freeze prices. When a business has increased operating costs, the cost of the product or the service must increase. This is to remain profitable, keep employees in a job and maintain quality. This government doesn't understand business or economics. Tax the rich, rent freezes, always pulling the wrong levers. Brilliantly put, Ben, and absolutely bang on. They just see these big conglomerates as the elite. They see landlords as pirates of bricks and mortar. They can't. This is a party that would, in any other world, would send you to jail for for stereotyping. But they're so happy to do it with things like business. Well, they're a business. They're a small... Do you remember working people and landlords when Angela Rayner was collared on that question? Are landlords working people? Well, we don't really mean that, do we? Thought with the other thought. It's like, no, Angela, they're working people. Because they're landlords. They're not working people. Are you serious, man? You want to be the Prime Minister? Kevin is in Leicester. Kevin, what have you got for us? Hi.
How you doing, Ian? Nice to speak to you again.
You too.
I hope you're well.
Thank you. Yeah, fire away.
I would like to reply to a call that's just been made a few callers ago, and I respect the caller, and we only hear what we hear. Maybe he's referring to Nigel and Reform being a one-man band. Can I just respond on that?
Please do.
I mean, well, the thing is, It's very easy to say that. But, for example, one example that comes out straight away is Nigel and Reform were looking a while ago to... there's a poor trade that is removing the two-child benefit cap. Actually, it was to pay tax credits to people who'd had more than 2 children. So they were only working people. It would have cost a lot less than Labour's. But then Roberts, as Chancellor spokesman, looked into things, and he did over an hour piece. I watched the whole thing. I thought, is he ever going to shut up? You know, going on about things, and he went against Nigel, and he was like, actually, we can't afford it because of what Labour's doing to this country. We really are on the brink at the minute. And then Nigel sort of agreed with that. How's that a one-man band, for a start?
I agree. I think there was a time when it felt like a one-man band. I think those days are kind of over, particularly after the last local elections.
Well, this is it, you know, and the councillors, you mentioned councillors. I don't want to distract from my point. I need to quickly have this little dig at the Conservatives. They come on the show and have the cheek to say that, the Reform aren't serious about welfare. We are, because of the two-child benefit cap. Actually, it was slightly different the way they were doing it. But you mentioned the councillors. You'll see Nigel sat there with councillors because he's done a hell of a lot of work with these councillors. It's important people realise what work he's put in to do this. And he's sitting there next to him and he'll be like, I haven't got a clue how to run a council. I haven't got a clue if people saying, but he knows. Him sat next to me knows. You know, and he's working with councillors. You've seen Richard Tice do over an hour. He was another one. Please give it a rest, Richard, about the North Sea and business. You know, this is not a one-man band. This has took several years in the making, and they're doing a real chance to actually do something now. But the ironic thing is, and as I say, I show the other caller respect because you only hear what you hear, but he's trying to portray that they're a one-man band.
And they're not a one-man band.
Level is Restore, who really are a one-man band currently at the moment, with respect to them. And I like a lot of what Rupert says, although at the minute I think he's being very, very daft. But I don't want to get into controversy, but I do think this is a bit of a bad decision. What's going on here? But from
do you know what, Kevin? I'm also putting you down for the panel on Question Time this week. I think you've done brilliantly. So, are you free on Thursday?
I think Zia Youssef would run rings around me, mate, and he's another one he's got a lot to say.
Exactly. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it'll be a great panel. I think I've even got Fiona Bruce's mobile number, so I'll probably send her a little text and say, Fee, we've got your panel for this week. Forget all the others. Wow. It's going to be Kevin in Leicester, Steve in Scunthorpe, and Paul. We're sorted.
I don't think the audience would get on too well with me because I'm centre-right with my views, unfortunately.
I'll come along with you as well for the free vol-au-vents in the green room. So we'll do it. We'll make a night of it as well. And there's some great clubs we can go out to afterwards as well. Kevin, good to have you on. Thank you, mate, for that. 0344 499 1000. He was actually making a complimentary point when he was saying, Zia, Richard, you don't need to keep we know it's not a one-man band. Actually, I think Richard Tice, who's probably more experienced in business than, well, certainly this Labour cabinet, there's literally no experience in business, but more so than an entire collection of most MPs. Zia similarly has, an incredibly healthy backstory in terms of knowing what goes on in the world outside of Westminster, etc. So the Nigel one-man band thing, there was a bit of that. Yes, he is a very persuasive, mesmeric and powerful character. I can see why some people would suggest he looks, fairly autonomous in some senses. But you look at the local elections, you look at the growing number of MPs, and I think that demonstrably tells a different story now. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk to Isabel Oakeshott, interestingly, in a couple of moments' time on that grooming gangs inquiry, because there's an element to this that many are concerned might get left out. We'll tell you what that is next on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This comes in... By the way, I saw a Deliveroo man jump on the train today. Is that normal? Do they... There's a reason why I mentioned that. I'll come to that in a moment. Do they take their... I suppose they take their bag to work. I'm only guessing that. I thought that is a very thorough service. If they're now delivering by train line, where a fella has to hop on with your pizza at one stop, get off at another one, grab a cab at that station, and then drive to your house to deliver your pepperoni thin crust or whatever the heck it is. 0344 499 1000. Now, the inquiry into grooming gangs has promised not to shy away from ethnicity of offenders. A failure of other agencies in the past, of course. This has come up on more than one occasion. Let's have a listen to Jess Phillips. She was, of course, recently resigned as Safeguarding Secretary, speaking about the inquiry.
You better make sure, honeys, that whatever you're...
The government remains resolute in delivering Baroness Casey's recommendations following her national audit into group-based child sexual exploitation and abuse. These crimes committed by grooming gangs are among the most horrific imaginable, and her report exposed over a decade of institutional inaction, and we are determined to ensure such failures are never repeated.
Nice SPAD-written statement from Jess Phillips. She was Safeguarding Secretary until she legged it just a week or so ago. Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor, is with us. Isabel, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
I don't take much from Jess Phillips on these issues, and we know that we could sit here for probably half an hour and talk about the many reasons why this element of ethnicity is not really something that gets her out of bed in the morning, and there are reasons perhaps for it. I've never understood, quite genuinely, why it would be controversial that you would point out the ethnicity if you have a set of offenders, a collective of offenders, many, many hundreds, possibly thousands. If they were all the same ethnicity, or they all did the same job, or they all came from the same country, whatever, any commonality would surely be not just interesting, but quite crucial to how you investigate something.
Well, completely. And I'm glad that the chair of the inquiry is saying that they will be absolutely sort of unafraid to do that. Do we trust them? Well, let's see. But we are where we are with these heinous offences, these awful crimes, because so many people in so many different institutions were cowardly when it came to acknowledging what was staring them in the face. Yep. And this is a cultural issue. And there's no point in pretending otherwise. It is absolutely plain for anyone to see that there is a pattern here. No one is saying that that means there aren't awful white, British, Christian sex offenders. Of course there are, and paedophiles and so on. But in the case of these particular rings of men who were abusing systematically in the most horrific way, there is an ethnic angle to it. And I don't really, like you, I don't know why anyone would shy away from that fact. And to me, it is on those people that say, oh, you know, oh, have you not seen that, you know, and then they point out some pictures of white sex offenders, you know, nothing to see here. It's on those people who present themselves as, you know, so hashtag be kind. It is on them that we are where we are.
Indeed, yes. And those very people usually say, the mainstream media aren't talking about this, are they? And then somebody thankfully sends them back 7,000 links to the various newspaper and TV and radio outlets that were reporting that. When it came to, I mean, the obvious example to me is always the Catholic Church. And when we had a huge problem there, nobody for one second thought that all Catholics or male Catholics in the church were child abusers. but the commonality factor there was that they all did the same job. They clearly gravitated there for a particular reason, so therefore that was of interest. And anyone who's sensible and vaguely intelligent will be able to say that, well, clearly, you know, Father Smith, that was my local priest, he wasn't like that, and no, neither were most of them, but some were. And similarly with this, nobody thinks that all Muslim men or all Pakistani men are rapists and child abusers, but clearly there's a commonality here, a cultural issue, a gross act of racism at its very lightest way of looking at it, but certainly a connection to their background.
Yeah, I'm afraid that is just a reality. And I mean, what a saga this has been, hasn't it? You know, years of shall we or shan't we bother having an inquiry? Shall it be a local inquiry? Shall it be a national inquiry? How many years does it go back for? And all the while, this stuff is still happening by all accounts. There are still young girls being horrifically abused and whose lives will never be the same again. They try to rebuild their lives, but it doesn't ever quite go away. All the while that politicians argue between them about what scale of inquiry to have and so on and so forth.
Yes.
I just hope, and I don't know what the timeframes for this inquiry is. It's not my special subject. I must admit, I find the whole thing so utterly shaming on our country and so abhorrent. You know, I'm the mother of two teenage girls of exactly the kind of age of the many of the young girls who have been so badly abused, and you know, it's unthinkable, isn't it? It's unthinkable that so many people who could have stopped this either turned a blind eye, and we've seen so much evidence of this from the victims themselves. They actually tried to victim blame. They tried to, they went after the victims instead of the criminals themselves. It is a stain on our country. It has brought us into national humiliation and condemnation. And I don't know how we clear it up, but clear it up it must be.
Absolutely. And just to go back to the kind of the point you've just tapped into it, actually, Isabel, and the point that I was making at the beginning, when people say, well, what about these, you know, white paedophiles? Yep, and they should all be in jail and rotting in hell as well. But the last time I looked, we didn't have establishment areas from law enforcement to social workers to counsellors covering it up. That is the fundamental and the most harrowing difference, I guess, between these is not just the offences and the commonality and the background of the offenders, but the fact that so many parts of the system, and it was more than one part, attempted to put huge blockades in the way of anyone either raising it, let alone trying to make it public.
Exactly that. And that is, you know, the second most shocking thing after the nature of the crimes themselves, which is that so many people were basically enabled this awful situation to be perpetuated. They enabled it to go on. I just don't know how anybody, anyone in a position of authority could have thought, well, there's nothing to see here, or actually I don't really want to see what there is to see here, or oh, I'm too afraid to raise this, so I'm just going to walk away from this. There are so many people with so much culpability in this horrible saga. And still they mount up the number of victims.
Yeah, indeed. While you are with us, Isabel, I'm bound to ask you, you've been a political journalist of many years. You've interviewed them all. You've been on those prime ministerial planes and those flights. You've been on presidential ones. You've been to the White House. You've Dining Street, done all that stuff. But has there ever been anything more exciting than the Makerfield by-election?
Well, it's pretty exciting, isn't it? I mean, you know, we don't always get too excited about by-elections or indeed local elections.
Well, it's true.
Why is it so exciting? Because there's a real possibility that Andy Burnham may lose, and then that will go down, you know, in the big tragedies of modern political history. You know, those kind of extraordinary stories, the absolute schadenfreude that so many people will feel, you know, that Andy Burnham has made this huge political gamble and lost. Now, of course, he may well win, but if he loses, That is one heck of a story, isn't it? And there's a few stories that just kind of really stand out. A bit like when Michael Gove stabbed Boris Johnson in the back when he was running for the leadership. On the morning of the nominations, as I recall, Michael Gove suddenly, who was supposed to be Boris's running mate, suddenly declared they didn't actually think Boris was up to the job. That was one of those moments. Then there was the two Miliband brothers falling out spectacularly when the older Miliband took umbrage that the younger Miliband wanted to run, and those brothers, their relationship, I don't think, was ever the same after it. So there are these sort of leadership moments in modern history that really stand out. And this could be one of those, or it might not be. It might be that the King of the North is crowned and he comes down to Westminster and proceeds to become our next Prime Minister. So that it's just the stakes are pretty high, aren't they?
Indeed, and there was one poll that came out, whatever those stakes are, this is hypothetical Westminster voting intention with Andy Burnham as Labour leader, that showed Labour on 30%, going right up by 8 points from where they currently are, Reform on 27. Now, OK, it's a more in common poll. I don't know what we read into them as pollsters or their organisation, so I get that. I'm not maligning anybody by saying that, but I just don't know, so I will just put that out there. But it is, we're not used to seeing Labour above Reform on any polls. Let's look at it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's, Andy Burnham has chosen this seat because he thinks he's got a really good chance of winning it, and he didn't have a massive choice. It wasn't like there was a sort of whole menu of options for him. That was where he was able to come to some agreement with a friend and a colleague to stand down. But he clearly thinks he's got a really good chance, and I don't think anyone in Reform thinks, we're just going to walk this. This is going to be brilliant. We've got a great local candidate and it's all going to be easy. I don't think anyone in the party thinks that. What they think is that they can give Andy Burnham a really good run for his money and that it's not in the bag for him either.
On that point, Isabel, thank you. Great to have you with us. Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International editor. Comments coming in from you. Paul in Exeter says, did that Deliveroo chap hop on the Pizza Express? Just asking. I would like to have kind of topped the pizza gag. Beautiful, Paul. I love it. Thank you. Another Paul says, I'm torn with the Makerfield by-election. I would love Reform to smash it and take the vacant Manchester mayoral seat too. But this could mean being stuck with two-tier, two-year Keir, which is almost as bad as losing Makerfield to the Greens, says Paul in Leeds. It's a really good point. But see, Starmer is knackered anyway, isn't he? Because if Burnham didn't get in, and there's a good chance I mean, this is going to be tough for Andy Burnham. I think there were probably more winnable seats if somebody had stood down, but this is the one he's going for. It would leave Keir Starmer with a leadership race. We know that Wes Streeting would put his name in. Angela Rayner, Ed Miliband would put theirs in. Or would they go, do you know what? Let's let this play out a little bit longer. They have the leadership race. It's just Streeting and Starmer, of which Starmer would win among Labour voters, of course. 0344 499 1000. Dan's in Liverpool. What have you got for us, Dan? Good afternoon.
Hello there. I hope you're doing well this fine day.
I'm all right, thank you. Fire away.
I think, truthfully, Andy is sort of abusing the Labour Party vote. And for me, I think it has to be Angela Rayner, or I hate to say this, as someone who wants to vote for the Labour Party, if it's not Angela, I might even do a protest vote and vote for Restore.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So you want Angela Rayner to be the Prime Minister?
I genuinely believe she's the woman for the job, and it's nothing to do with her being a woman. I genuinely believe she's the right person for it.
Right. I mean, that's you're in quite a small group of people, some might say. I don't know. Maybe you can tell me about other mates that are Labour supporters, what they think.
We might be a small group, but I can tell you we're definitely right.
You're the Red Army.
Yeah. Well, it's not a big one, but it's better for our hands. Don't get me wrong, I do think Andy is a really brilliant person, but I think his job should be where he's at now. He shouldn't be using his authority and his appeal to the people to undermine the political party like this. If it's going to be anyone, it should be Angela.
Interesting. Yeah. What do you think, just out of interest, in a nutshell, Dan, what would Angela bring to the table, do you think? Why would she make a great Prime Minister?
I think she'd be the person who's actually come from a proper working class background, and she actually knows how the people feel, and she can communicate better with the actual working class person better than anyone else can. That's not to say Andy isn't good. I just think it's not his time, and Angela has done her due.
Dan, are you interested in being on Question Time this Thursday?
Possibly, yeah. I do work
Okay, all right, I'm going to put you on the list. We've got Stephen Scunthorpe, you, Dan, Kev in Leicester and Paul. I think we've got the panel sorted. Great call, Dan, thank you. Look, it's a democracy. We say this quite often, don't we? You might not be a natural Labour voter listening to this, but Labour are in power. It's a little like last night. There were two very significant games of football that took place. Do you know, I'd actually forgotten. I had my eyes so focused on Chelsea Spurs, I'd forgotten City were even playing in what was clearly a decisive match, because, of course, if they drew or lost, then that gives Arsenal the title. And, of course, there I am watching the Chelsea match, totally forgetting about City, and up it comes. Arsenal get the title because City drew, and therefore Arsenal can't be beaten. Now, Arsenal, let's be honest, haven't really won the Premier League, have they? They haven't really won it. They've only won it like Starmer won the last election. City lost it. City lost it. Arsenal didn't win it. And I think, as a result, I mean, lots of things are going to happen. I think Arsene Wenger should step down now. I think Thierry Henry should quit. You know, Charlie George will never play again. So it's going to be a difficult second season for Arsenal. 22 years, they said. It took us 22 years. They were boasting, Arsenal fans, going, 22 years it took us for this. That's, yeah, it tells you something, mate. 22 years without a win. Not that I'm bitter or anything. Chelsea will finish this season behind Bournemouth. That tells you everything as well. 0344 499 1000. We've got Voice of Doom Day 3, I think. Is it 3, Amy? Yeah? 3. Day 3 coming up. It's very exciting, by the way. Well, sort of. We'll have that coming next on Talk.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut.
Bob Odenkirk!
Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air.
Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely. I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1?
Exactly, that's true, yes.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Don't go away, Alan, in North Yorkshire with you shortly. We've got the voice of doom, of course. This is the mystery voice, but it's a political voice. So you're looking for a politician. Could be of any background, stripe, party, young, old, left, right, dead or alive. Very simple question. This is day 3 of this voice. No one's got it so far. Who is this?
In how we think about.
Let's hear that again.
In how we think about.
And again.
In how we think about.
If you think you know who that is, 87222. 87222. It's the only way you can have a cracker. There's no big prize or anything like that. And in fact, there's no prize at all. But the kudos of saying, I won the voice of doom. 87222, if you know who this is.
In how we think about.
If we get the correct answer, then we reveal all in the next hour. If not, it rolls over to tomorrow. Right, let's move to this just before we go back to the calls. Gemma Collins. Do we call her a reality star? I suppose that's the way you do it now. I mean, these people have, turned out to be... I think Ryan Clark makes the point, doesn't it? They all laughed at me, but they're not laughing now, or I'm still laughing, or something like that. I turned out as a laugh, or I started out as a laugh, and I'm still whatever it was. Point being, they've all done very well out of it. So Gemma Collins did was it an interview? She did a sit down with the education, a sort of video, a social media video with the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson. Let's have a look.
You better make sure, honeys, that whatever you're going to be learning, you concentrate, because you're going to be taking it into your future career. And one day, kids, this could be you. I hope this will help people to be ambitious. I didn't even get a grade in maths because I found it so panicky and so stressful. Part of that was not believing in myself. All that pie over sky or whatever it is, you probably know.
All that pie over sky, all of that stuff. Well, pie being the operative word, mate. I think that's where it all went wrong. But no, I won't be the first person that made that observation. That's Gemma Collins, encouraging kids to be ambitious. You too could end up like Bridget Phillipson, says Gemma Collins. Alan's in North Yorkshire. Alan, on Andy Burnham, what have you got for us? Hi.
Yeah, this is your octogenarian toothless mate.
Love it.
Still love you.
Love it. And you too, Al.
Hey,
fire away.
What was I going to say? Yeah, we're talking about Burnham. I still don't think he's going to win it.
Yep.
Because I think what's going to happen now, we've got Reform who are eschewing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And now we've got this ridiculous Restore thing coming along. Every vote for Restore is a vote for Burnham.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're, like you were saying earlier, they haven't got to take much of a slice, a couple of grand.
Yeah.
If they get 2.5 grand, right, then that's the difference between Reform winning and not winning. It's that close. I don't think it's going to be a shoo-in that Reform's going to win. But, you see, we're British.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm English. But that's another thing. English people love nothing more than, what do they call it? Oh, Alan, please help me. People that can't...
the underdog.
The underdog, yeah, well done. We love an underdog. And if people think that Reform and Labour are in cahoots.
Yes.
And who knows that they're not, right? There could be a bit of jiggly
Labour and Reform
going
are
on
in
here.
cahoots. Well, but the thing is, I mean, you touched on it there, Alan. There were 5,399 votes in it last time between Josh Simons, the Labour candidate, and Robert Kenyon, the Reform candidate. Now, Labour will do better with Andy Burnham, but Reform will do better because it's now 2 years down the line and people are fed up. But it could mean, as you rightly say, if Restore come along and nip at the heels of Reform, they could scupper their chances, Al. Final point.
My point exactly, and I think that is actually crucial. Reform UK.
Yep. Restore.
Restore UK.
Restore Britain.
Are going to do more damage to
Reform.
Reform. Yeah, I'm sorry, mate. I'm old.
No, listen, you're not. You're brilliant. Alan, we've got to stop there because the news is upon us. Here's the voice of doom.
In how we think about
87222 if you know.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Yes, welcome. It is the home of Common Sense. 0344 499 1000. Lots to get through. We are, of course, still focusing on what is likely to happen in Makerfield. We threw out the kind of, if you like, the sixth form debating society's obvious question. Who's going to win the Makerfield by-election? But it comes with lots of other categories within that question. I mean, seriously, who is going to win this thing? Because it's all changing slightly. Burnham's star is rising a bit in the opinion polling. And then Restore come along, which could scupper reform, etc. So many facets and elements to this story. Who's it likely to be? Andy Burnham, Robert Kenyon, Rebecca Shepherd. And they're just the big three we've heard about. We haven't even really dwelt on Howling Lord Hope, who's standing for the Monster Raving Loony Party. I'm not making that up either. Also coming up this afternoon, the Treasury negotiating with supermarkets to voluntarily freeze essential food prices like eggs, bread and milk. Supermarkets don't actually make a whole load of profit on those particular products, often seen as lost leaders. How else would you tackle the cost of living or the cost of food crisis? Because there is a suggestion from the Bank of England that there'll be a 7% rise in food costs. Another rise in food costs due to global energy and fertiliser issues. And a new pilot programme will stop GPs from issuing sick notes instead of referring workers to social prescribers to address the high number of those not fit for work. Will anyone ever get to the bottom of this? Nobody wants to have a pop at someone who genuinely cannot go to work. So we are sort of all a little bit going with it. Someone's genuinely ill or impeded in some way. We get it. But the numbers are absolutely flipping huge. Details to come in just a moment. 0344 499 1000. This in from Matt, who says, Ian, Restore and Reform may indeed have very similar policies. However, I wouldn't trust Farage to deliver an Uber Eats order, let alone any of his promises. There is a Marmite factor in all kind of what they used to call populist politicians, used as a kind of term of insult, really, which is curious, because if someone's popular, I know it doesn't quite mean the same thing, you'd think, well, that's a good thing, right? Yeah, but he sits in a long line of people who will divide the room. I get Matt. Thank you very much indeed for that. Simon says, please don't forget that the turnout at the last general election in Makerfield was around 50%. So as they did in Great Yarmouth, Restore Britain will be looking to tap into the other half of the potential electorate. Says Simon, Devon and Restore Britain member. Thank you, Simon, for that. It will make a difference. It will make a difference, and it's not got to be. When something could be this tight, these are exactly... The Tories found this out in 2024. There were so many areas where they were scuppered because of that Reform vote, although Reform did impressive second placing in lots of areas. Let's just move to this story. I just alluded to it there at the beginning, the government's pilot in replacing the GP sick notes with a new system to reduce the number of people signed off for work and therefore claiming benefits. Workers with health issues will be referred to social prescribers for advice like exercise and job coaching aimed at keeping them employed. Former Tory MP, I think we can say former Prime Minister, actually. Sorry, it says PM. Former Tory Prime Minister. I was going to give him his full title. An all-round nice man, Rishi Sunak, made this point back in 2024, which is worth a little reminder. Here he is.
In 2011, 20% of those doing a work capability assessment were deemed unfit to work. But the latest figure now stands at 65%. That's wrong. People are not 3 times sicker than they were a decade ago.
That's rather the point, isn't it? People are not 3 times sicker than they were a decade ago. So what are they then? Adrian Massey is the author of Sick Note Britain, might be able to shine some light. Adrian, good afternoon to you. Interesting, by the way, I don't think I've seen Rishi Sunak. I mean, that was from a while ago, but it's the first time I think we've played a clip of him since he was the Prime Minister. So there he was, good, our old friend Rishi. But he was making a rather good point there, certainly up for some discussion. Are people 3 times sicker in just 10 short years?
It's a good point, Ian. I think the answer is probably not. And it begs the question of how ill do you need to be deemed sick? It's a semantic question, to be honest. It's because it's not a question with a binary answer.
Yeah. Because we keep wondering. I said at the beginning on this, Adrian, look, if somebody is genuinely sick, I think most reasonable people feel quite proud that we have a system that assists those that are most in need. And I've never had a problem that this sort of safety net exists to be there for those that fall into those cracks, sometimes for a long period of time, often for short periods of time. But great, we're a civilised country, a Western democracy. Isn't that brilliant? We pay our taxes, and this is one part of the pie where those taxes go to. But it's the numbers, isn't it? It's the numbers that are kind of bamboozling us here, and we are forced into that always slightly tricky, often uncomfortable avenue of scepticism when we see numbers this big and we see them rise so fast.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this problem is age old. It's been around as long as human beings have, in that we recognise that people fall on hard times, illness can strike them, any number of misfortunes, accidents, injuries, and we want to help those people. That's charitable, that's human, completely understandable. But of course, the flip side of that coin as well is that life is just existentially hard. It's a reality in life that we face challenges from cradle to grave, and we need to battle those challenges to endure as a society. And so if you offer people an escape route, if you offer a life where life is made easier, we know, just because most people have got an understanding of human nature, which is that they know that people will often look for the easier route. We're not all pure and moral people, and how you balance those two, how you square that circle of a system that supports people in need whilst not being abused by people who are exploiting the system, gaming the system.
Sure.
And the issue there is no such system, and that is the problem.
Yeah, and whenever we talk about this, I will get a full switchboard of people who are angry because they're out working, they're paying their taxes, and they're thinking, what the hell is going on? I'll then get other calls, often messages sent from people who are on some kind of sickness benefit who will say, do you know how hard it is to get this benefit? It's not just given to you. The GP, it's an urban myth that the GP just signs it off. And even if the GP does sign it off, that's not the end of the process. That's just the beginning of the process. Then you've got to fill out 10 gazillion forms. And even then it's not the end of the process. Then you get assessed. And even then it's not the end of the process. So we end up with this kind of straight... You're familiar with all of this, Adrian. So you have this two kind of very polarised argument with a lot of anger on both sides. I honestly... doing this for a living, being a journalist, I'm a reasonably bright guy, Adrian. I do not know what the answer is.
There isn't an answer. It's probably a disappointing truth. I think the way we need to approach this is we've got to stop pretending there's a magic bullet to the problem, because it doesn't exist. Obviously, I have an interest in the topic. Every time it's in the news, I read the comments pages. And invariably, people say, well, everyone should be seen face to face. You should assess everybody, etc., etc. That doesn't fit with the evidence. There just isn't a scheme which will demonstrably demonstrate objectively in ways you can prove whether someone who says they don't feel able to work is actually able to work. I think the reality is our economic situation now, looking at bond markets in particular, our credit rating around the world, our budget deficit, I think that the market is going to impose demand-side solutions on us at this stage. So I just mean that it's not going to be seen as feasible that we can pay for the numbers of people that we are paying for not to work at a time when the infrastructure is falling apart, our productivity is flatlining, and we don't have, for example, a navy to speak of. So I think change is coming, and I think it'll be foisted on us by circumstances, and there will be winners and losers. There will be people who probably could work, given the right incentives and the right encouragement, who in the future will have to work. And in many ways, that will be good for them and good for the country. And sad to say, I think that in straitened times that we're going to be entering, there are also going to be people, the ones we were talking about at the beginning, who are genuinely in difficult circumstances, who will suffer, because we as a country are going to go through very tough times, I suspect.
I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, that word unsustainable gets sort of thrown around, but I mean, quite literally unsustainable. I mean, that's just it's not a political point. It's not an inflammatory point. It is just a fact, right? I mean, that you can't have the outgoings exceeding the incomings, because that's literally what's happening as well. A budget bigger than the entirety of the NHS cannot carry on.
No, you can't argue with maths. Is the reality of that. I think probably the perspective I would bring to this, it's something I've been thinking about for some years as an issue, and what the answer actually is. I think the main thing to understand, and what would help us all have a more sensible conversation about, and sickness in particular, and I mean people who have jobs. I don't mean people who are long-term unemployed and claiming sickness benefits. I mean people in the job market, because that's where this often begins, is someone falls out of work for a period of time, and then statistically the risk of them ever getting back into work really begins to drop off, and they enter the pool of long-term unemployed.
Sure.
But just talking about that group of people who have jobs and who are in danger of falling out of the job market, I think if we just understood this is a contractual problem rather than a medical problem, and that sounds a bit perverse because we're talking about sickness, but think of it in terms of an employer and an employee have entered into a contract with one another. And things happen in life, force majeure in our insurance contracts. Sometimes things go wrong and a contract can't be upheld. Sometimes employers go bankrupt. But more often than not, the issue is on the employee's side, they're no longer able to uphold that contract of employment. And I think we just need to partly let market forces take effect and give people the respect to be trusted to make decisions as adults.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is if we lived in a generally less regulated world, if it was easier for employers, the risks to employers of hiring people were less, because equally the risks of dismissing them were less. So we had a generally more dynamic labour market. That would be one thing. And I feel quite strongly as well about the dignity of people who have made a perfectly rational decision that they don't feel able to work, they're too unwell to work, having to go through this charade of demonstrating that to somebody else, when often they can't. It's humiliating. If someone says, I'm too tired or I'm in too much pain, how do they demonstrate that?
Yeah.
So if we got to a world where people were treated as adults and had conversations with one another, where an employer was able to lay out to someone what the option... Really what I'm trying to say is people should be free to make decisions for themselves. And the corollary of that is they also need to live with the consequences of those decisions.
I wonder, and this is it's been my theory on this, Adrian, for a few years now, and I've got no qualification in this field, but I wonder if in years to come, sociologists, anthropologists, government futurists and all those kind of various people that look at trends and eras and phases that the populations go through. I wonder whether this will be the kind of era, and this era could last for 50 years, of the nearest name I can give it is social lethargy. Not laziness as in the classic sense, and perhaps it was accelerated a bit by COVID, but I wonder whether we've just hit a point in the system. We lived under sort of post-war, fairly statist rules and regs, and Thatcherism comes along, capitalism, the big bang in the 80s, all systems go. Then everything gets bloody expensive and you can't buy a house. Wasn't controversial to buy. It was controversial to have a new car once upon a time, but buying a house is fairly simple. Now, loads of people have got new cars. No one's got a flipping house, so God knows what happened there. But we're in this strange sort of upside-down world, and people are working longer hours, and they're seeing it's not quite possible to have the holiday they once had. And so there's all of these factors, and I just wonder whether people have thought, I just... I'm not suicidal. I just don't want to do this anymore. My heart's not in the game anymore. And that's a very simplified way of putting things. But
no,
I
agree.
Yeah,
I think you're touching on something there, which lots of people have. I think many people have felt the same way over recent decades. There was I can't remember the author, but Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
That's right. Yeah.
A book for those who are interested. No, I think you're right. There's a certain end of Rome feel at the moment, probably because we've made lots of policy errors economically, fiscally, the way we've allocated, the way we've organised society for a long time now. We've made a lot of unwise decisions, which are now coming back to bite us. And probably because, I'm no economist, but I think because credit was so cheap for so long, that as a society, we've been able to develop ambitions and ideas about our quality of life and what life can give us that are well beyond what our actual level of productivity can now sustain.
Yeah.
And I fear that era is now coming to an end. And as I say, I think there will be a lot of people who are victim to that as the cost of living and inflation, and as I say, potentially really quite stringent changes brought on us by some kind of currency or economic event, which I fear is not too far away.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think this idea of, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome.
Yeah.
We've somehow reached a stage where many people feel that the things that in previous generations they could strive for, buying a house, having a quality of life, a quality of life to aspire to, that now just seems so unattainable.
Yeah.
And equally, the incentives not to work so great that you can understand why a lot of people have just opted out.
Well, I've always made the point, it was not that long ago, just pre the sort of, I suppose, the financial crash, 08, and that's probably, that would be plonked into this equation as well, I guess. But yeah, I can remember the days. The lollipop lady had a property portfolio. My work experience kid had about 90 grand on credit cards, and you could write a mortgage application on the inside of your leg and get a house, and all of that has kind of that's how it was for a little while, and now it's all disappeared and life is tough. Adrian, let's speak again. It's been lovely having you on. Adrian Massey, author of Sick Note Britain. There's a lot to feed into that. We'll take some calls on it as well. We might even talk more about this tomorrow. It genuinely fascinates me. Clearly, we have, as Rishi Sunak said in that clip, clearly we haven't got 3 times more sick people than we had a decade ago. So something else is happening. What is it? Details to come. 0344 499 1000.
Not wig.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk!
Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air.
Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely.
Go.
I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1.
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
David in the Cotswolds says, what is it with Burnham and Starmer's Brill cream? Even Collins is wearing it. Is Collins running for Parliament, says David. Right, can I just, I'm going to have to report David to Ofcom for bullying, frankly. Firstly, I was wearing... Starmer has copied my hair, all right? Burnham has copied Starmer, so don't be labelling me as some kind of subservient, hair-based copycat, David in the Cotswolds. I can never do this with a straight face. And it's not Brill cream either. We were discussing... Brill cream, that stuff's still around. It had a little bit of a rebirth, didn't it, a couple of years back. Brill cream gives you the right shine, but all it does is flatten your hair. You can't stand your hair up with that stuff. It will give you a shine. Believe me, I could write a PhD. I could have a PhD. I could write a dissertation on hair products. I've never got to the bottom of it. Show me one that is 100% and I'll pay you good money. David, thank you for that. Ian is in Bridgend. On fit notes or sick notes, what have you got for us, Ian?
Oh, yeah. Just listening to your expert there saying that we haven't got 3 times as many sick people as we did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I bet we have. I bet you a tenner that we have, and we're importing more every blooming minute, aren't we?
Well, there is, yeah, but I don't know how many of those people are... I mean, they're not on the list, though, are they? They're not even claiming this.
Yeah, but they're part of the problem, aren't they? Even if they're not on the list,
No, they're absolutely part of the welfare problem, yeah. There's no way around that.
That's right, we've got additional wives now, they're being eligible for more more planes.
Well, it's just it's beyond belief that any government, left wing or right wing, would go, "Hey, this is not part of the problem." Of course, it's part of the problem. It's costing £6 million a day.
Exactly.
To facilitate, that's just the hotels. That doesn't include going forward.
That's right. You know, we had a perfectly sustainable welfare system up until a couple of years ago, and then we get mass immigration. You know, that's at the root of all of our problems. We all know it, Ian. None of these experts are prepared to address it, but we all know what the real issue is. And until we sort that out, then we're doing something up a country. You know?
Well, indeed. Ian, great call. Thank you. And I make this point quite a lot, because even with the immigration thing, so the cost of the hotels, as far as I know, I don't think this includes the £39 you get a week as a migrant in a hotel. So I don't know whether it costs that. Let's assume it does, to be generous, all right? Because there's not much generosity elsewhere in this conversation. £6 million at about £2 billion a year. And whenever you talk to a politician, and I can still scarcely believe they play this card, they always say, well, £2 billion sounds like a lot of money, but actually in the grander scale, when you consider the welfare budget is $350 billion, it hardly touches the sides. Right, stop saying that, because you're sounding stupid. And I'll tell you why. Because we could go through lots of other departments. I'll come back to immigration specifically. You could go through lots of other departments and look at waste and find $1 billion here and $1 billion there and $1 billion somewhere else and go, hang on, when you add it all up, suddenly we're at 30 billion. 30 billion. That's not insignificant. That's like 10% of the welfare budget. But of course, the immigration issue isn't just about the cost of hotels, because many of those people will be given the right to remain, and then there's a cost implication for that. And even with the right to remain, those that work, every bit of data will tell you, we're not talking about people who become neurosurgeons who work diligently and brilliantly in the NHS or care homes. We're talking about people who will not be in any of those kind of jobs. They'll do low paid jobs. They will therefore be arguably claiming some kind of assistance because of their low pay, whether that's rent or something else. They may well eventually bring family with them. The cost of that is absolutely vast. That's not a right-wing point. It's a basic economic point. I've always said the strongest argument on immigration is we can argue about social cohesion, which is right up there as well. Doesn't get enough airtime, frankly. But just the economic. If you don't want to get into, who is coming here, where they're coming from, just talk the economics, because no one with a scintilla of intelligence could defend on that basis alone. Derek is in Preston. Derek, what have you got for us on Back to Politics? Fire away.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for taking my call.
It's all right.
I was just wondering, say Burnham did win the by-election, and then there was a leadership contest, and there'd be 3, maybe 4 candidates. Yep. So you're talking like Burnham, Starmer, perhaps Angela Rayner and Wes Streeting. I'm just wondering whether it would be like some sort of American election where they all stand up and slag each other off and say what sort of policies they've got that the other one hasn't. And
I love the American ones. When you've got the Republic, I remember the one we had Donald Trump, George Bush, the other George, Jeb Bush. Remember him, the other brother from Florida, I think, and a few other characters. And they're not just politely disagreeing because they're in the same party. They're having a right old row.
Well, they're all going to slag each other off and say what their policies are and what the other people's policies are. I mean, where are we going to be as a country at the end of the day?
Well,
the
3 idea.
or 4 candidates.
Yeah, I think somebody greater than me, possibly one of our callers earlier this week, made this very fundamental point. If the answer to the question is Andy Burnham, then what the hell is the question?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he wants to take us back to pre-Margaret Thatcher and nationalise everything. I mean, they haven't worked out how they're going to pay for it all.
But then again, does he really, though, Derek? Because remember, he went through the Blairite phase when he was absolutely fine with signing off privatisation in the NHS. And now he's kind of walking around like he's Harold Wilson without the pipe.
They're all political refugees that have just never done any job in their life, basically.
It's true.
just on the other thing, in relation to you talking about health as well, the thing is, I think the reason why more people are unemployed is because all you need to do is Google the symptoms, and you can mimic the symptoms. I've just done ADHD. I could be ADHD if I wanted to. I could convince a doctor I'm ADHD, no problem, and get signed off.
But would that give you enough to? I mean, it would. But would it give you enough for the full kind of PIP payment?
Well, no, I could get a fit note now on ADHD if I just rang the doctor up and went in. Now, whether I'd get benefits out of it, I don't know. But
you could get the first base.
It's like the old bad back syndrome. You can't basically.
That is the trouble, right? It's the new bad back.
You can't say, oh, you've not got a bad back because you can't really test it. And it's the same with all the other ones. ADHD. Well, I mean, how many millions of people are on ADHD? Because honestly, it's that easy these days to just go on Google and just see what the symptoms are.
Even if I hear that. But even if you take ADHD specifically out of it, Derek, and just say mental health, I mean, who hasn't had a bad day in the last month? We all have bad days. I had one this morning. It started off quite bad, and then it turned out to be all right. And then I ate too much rubbish food for lunch, and now I feel like I need 12 hours sleep. So is that a mental health issue, or is that just me being a...
before, but I got diagnosed with PTSD, depression, and all the rest of it last year. But I'm back fine now. I had a few counselling sessions, and that was it. You know, that's all you need, and get back to work. You know, I'm 63 and I've worked all my life, but that's what I needed, just get back to work.
Yeah, back to work is pretty key, isn't it? Listen, great call. Derek, lovely to talk. Thank you. Derek in Preston, 0344 499 1000. And Nigel says, when you look at the final price you pay at the checkout, the government collects the most total money through VAT on food sales. Wonder why this isn't being looked at in terms of helping the cost of living. Yeah. I mean, the VAT is just a con, isn't it? It's just like all these little added, there's VAT on that. It's just a way of collecting taxes. Is there another way of doing it? That's a question that's old as tax itself. Right, Voice of Doom. About 40 minutes ago, we played you day 3 of the mystery voice. This was the voice.
In how we think about...
Let's hear that again.
In how we think about...
These are just a few of the guesses. Edwina Curry, no. Miriam Cates, no. Sarah Champion, no. Laura Trott, no. Liz Truss, no. Andrea Leadsom, no. Carmen Smith, no. I don't know who Carmen Smith is, by the way. But apparently the younger... Oh, is that her? Carmen Smith, Boris's appointment, yes. Youngest member of the House of Lords. She's about 14 or something. 13. Oh, 30, sorry. 30. 30. It's not Carmen Smith. And nobody's got it correct, which means it rolls over to tomorrow. 3:30, this is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, 0344 499 1000. Back with more of your calls and comments in just a moment. OK, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Controversial de-extinction firm Colossal Biosciences claims to have answered the question by hatching its first chicks from an entirely artificial egg. The firm hopes the technology could one day be used to bring back animals like the New Zealand is it a moa bird? Moa bird, which weighed 230 kilos, by the way. Let's speak with Dr. Helen Pilcher, science writer and author. Bring Back the King, the new science of de-extinction. Helen, good afternoon to you.
Hi.
Nice to have you with us. Before we speak, I can tell you this now, before we get into this, I reckon we could speak for about a day on this, because there's so much. I mean, this is the kind of science that, like, kids are interested in, right? This grabs us. This gets our attention. We can talk about splitting atoms all day long, but this is the kind of area of science that we look at and say, yeah, this is genuine. So you've got, in the science world, you've got one of the best jobs in the world, right?
It's pretty good. I mean, people are really excited at the prospect of bringing dinosaurs back.
Oh.
Spoiler, we can't do that.
What?
Sorry, but things like the moa, this giant, enormous, extinct New Zealand bird, if you believe the scientists at Colossal, they are making strides towards it.
Well, firstly, I mean, I can't, not pick up on the we can't. I'm a very blunt and frankly pessimistic news you broke to us there, which I really wasn't expecting, Helen. I've got my heart rate has just gone up. We can't bring dinosaurs. I was hoping at least for a bit of a pterodactyl moment or something.
Yeah, sorry for that bombshell. So basically, to de-extinct anything, to bring anything back from extinction, you need a source of its DNA. DNA breaks down over time. Dinosaurs are just too long gone. So we're never going to have a T-Rex or a Spinosaurus. I hate to break it to you. Jurassic Park remains in the realms of fiction. But it does mean that animals that went extinct more recently, potentially, maybe, with a prevailing wind and a bit of clever biology, we might be able to bring things maybe like the woolly mammoth or the dodo, or maybe even this big New Zealand bird, the moa, back. And it won't be exact, but it might be something a bit like it.
I have to say, Helen, you have redeemed yourself with the two words woolly mammoth. I mean, now I'm really interested, because that was a beast, that thing, wasn't it? But it was, along with the dodo, these are kind of, they're sort of iconic, in that sense, aren't they? We talk about them. My little boy was asking me not that long ago about, he asked me, did I ever see a dodo? I said, thanks for that, son. But yeah, I mean, that's, we still learn about this stuff, but they could, because of DNA capture, I'm coming up with a science phrase there that probably doesn't exist. Sounds good though, doesn't it? DNA capture, whatever the official terminology is, this could be done.
Well, so let's go with the woolly mammoth, seeing as you've asked about the woolly mammoth. Woolly mammoths died out really recently. There were woolly mammoths around on an island in Siberia at the same time as the Egyptians were building pyramids. So this is quite recent, about 3,500 years ago. We can get DNA from woolly mammoth remains. We can break that DNA down and learn about its full genetic sequence. And then the idea then is that you would take the genetic essence of a woolly mammoth, and you would edit it into a cell from its closest living relative, which is an elephant, and then use that to create an embryo. So in theory, this is kind of possible, but the thing I would say is it will never actually be a mammoth, because it will not be genetically...
It'll just be a woolly elephant, right?
It'll be an elephant that can, it's like putting a woolly jumper on an elephant. And the big question is, why? Why would we do this? And I think the most important thing with the woolly mammoth or the moa that is in the news today is, why might this be a good idea? What's the purpose of this?
Well, right. That was going to be my next point. What is the purpose?
Well, with Colossal, it certainly generates a lot of headlines.
Yep.
So I take it with a pinch of salt. They haven't showed their hand. They haven't provided any scientific data. It's all by press release. However, they're kind of sometimes people talk about a moral obligation for bringing back species that we were instrumental in getting rid of. That's kind of interesting. But for me, the biggest and most important reason is if it could be ecologically relevant, if it could make a positive impact to the environment. We're hemorrhaging species left, right and centre. If by bringing a species back or something close to it, you could have a positive effect on the environment, then maybe it's worth considering. But that's a big if, because of course we don't really know.
Indeed. And I would imagine, I'm taking a punt here, Helen, but the way that science is becoming ever more intertwined with artificial intelligence, that process could certainly accelerate and assist in, I know the jury is often out in this field, but the smart money would say that would be a benefit to this kind of process.
Well, certainly researchers are using AI in the early stages, because when you're trying to work out the genetic recipe for a species, you're talking like a sequence of chemicals that is billions of letters long. So AI can help there, but there's no shortcut for the lab-based science, the cell biology, and the looking after the animals you create. This is actually a very practical science. And where Colossal are at is in their very, very earliest stages, tinkering about with creating something that might be a bit like an eggshell. Indeed. And of course, in doing so, everybody would have their favourite thing that they would want to return to the planet. I'm all up for the saber-toothed tiger, but I sense that might have gone the same way as the dinosaur in your earlier answer. Yeah, well, I mean, it's a great question. Can I give you my answer to that? Please do, yes. So the animal that I would most like to see de-extincted is one that is still with us, and let me explain. So the northern white rhino, there are only 2 left, and they're elderly females. They can't reproduce. So if we do nothing, that species is gone. But this kind of technology that people like Colossal, but there are lots of academic scientists who are looking into it, you can chuck it at extinct species from the past, but you can actually use it to the endangered species that are still with us. That's a very good point. One would assume that would be, I don't want to use the word simpler in a throwaway way, but that would be a more obvious way, wouldn't it? Certainly, because we have a living species that we can learn from the biology from. So for me, even though it's still with us, the last 2 northern white rhinos are basically ghosts. They're we call them functionally extinct, but if we could use this same technology to bring them back, that would be my number 1. I love it. Helen, lovely to have you on with us. Thank you, Dr. Helen Pilcher, science writer and author of Bring Back the King, The New Science of De-Extinction. I didn't know that. I nearly shed a tear for the white rhino then. There's only 2, she said, in the world. I mean, I'm not that struck. I have to say, I've seen it. I'm a little bit racist with the white rhino. I don't like the white ones. I just think they're kind of like not really rhinos. They're just sort of wannabe rhinos. So I don't take them seriously as rhino. I mean, they're things, they're living creatures, and they're big, and they've got that thing on their nose and stuff, and they probably do you a fair bit of damage. But I just don't like the white ones. Sorry. That said, saber-toothed tigers, Tyrannosaurus rex, and the New Zealand moa bird, which apparently is a heck of a beast, 230 kilos, this thing. That's some of those things are possible. Some, as our last guest Helen said, some would be impossible because the DNA has gone for good. But never say never. 0344 499 1000. How do we do this without sounding a bit partridge? What animal would you bring back? There's a lot of those little, when you see a headline saying, there's been a discovery of an animal or a creature that's not been seen for 100 years, and then you realise it's like a fly or some kind of little bug, and I'm sure it's significant in the ecological system, but it's just not that interesting, is it? Not as interesting as the white rhino or the black rhino, as I like to see them. Right, moving on. Wes Streeting, who resigned, of course, last week as Health Secretary in Starmer's cabinet, has spoken today in the Commons about his resignation. Let's have a little listen to what the former Health Secretary had to say.
I left the government because we are in the fight of our lives against nationalism. And it is a fight that we are currently losing. Unless we change course, we risk handing the keys of number 10 to reform. And I do not want that on our consciences.
Yeah, well, that's what he said. What do we make of that? We may return to that as well tomorrow on the programme. It's interesting. I mean, scholars of politics in years to come will look at this with utter amazement. And you have to remind yourself every now and again, although reform has kind of been in different forms, like the Brexit Party, and I know UKIP is a different party, but its leader kind of came from that, went to Brexit Party, becomes reform. But for a party that's only been in power, that had no MPs pre the last election, right? I think I'm right. Yeah, no MPs pre the last election. So less than 20 months ago, are now being talked of as the greatest danger to the sitting government that came in with a majority. That's a story in itself. So there's a lot to say on that. Paul says, what about the Starmosaurus? I think that's long extinct, isn't it? I might be wrong, Paul. This one from Pumpkin, who says 99% of life has been wiped out. What's left now is the 1% that survived. Oh, I did hear one of those weird stats that kind of freak you out a bit in that kind of ballpark quite recently. It's gone. It's gone. It'll come back. Pumpkin, thank you. 99% of life has been wiped out. What is left now is the 1% that survived. What about that? 0344 499 1000. Now, the FIFA World Cup 2026 is almost here, thanks to Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier. Our friends at talkSPORT are giving you the chance to be there. Adidas are sending you and a friend to Dallas. You'll see England, Croatia live June the 17th. You get return flights, you get accommodation, you get spending money, tickets, and your very own Adidas official match ball try-onder. You can be at England's first game of the FIFA World Cup at one of the best stadiums on the planet. Here's how to enter.
Get ready for that winning feeling. For your chance to win, head to talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Texts and online entries cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 1st of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. See full terms and conditions at talksport.com/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. Full T's and C's at win.talk.tv.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut.
Bob Odenkirk!
Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air.
Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely. I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1.
Exactly, that's true, yes.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Why can't we bring back dinosaurs? They brought back the Spice Girls, says Talk. And take that, for that matter. This from Mark in Staffordshire says, you're not giving Gemma Collins enough credit. She spoke about Richard III several times. Rachel from Accounts will be fuming. Very good point. Mark's in Exeter. Mark, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Very good, thanks. What are your thoughts?
Going back to this conversation on Miss Storr.
Yes.
Policies, other than sending everybody back, what do they actually stand for?
It's a very good point, isn't it? I mean, I suppose at the moment they would say, look, we're new, give us time to have some, greater policies together, but don't underestimate how dominant our immigration policy is. It's central to everything we do. That might be their answer. I don't know that, by the way, Mark.
I personally feel, and this is just my talking to people online who support Miss Storr.
Yeah.
You're going to send millions back. What happens if the country says no, we don't want them back?
Well,
then what does we still?
Yeah, I mean, it's a completely, some people will be bitterly disappointed to hear this. It's completely impractical. It's not even possible to do what you're doing unless you've got like several hundred billions of pounds and 100 years.
Well, yeah, and
so that's probably how long it's going to take.
People are voting for.
Yeah,
I hear this great slogan of "We want our country back,"
but I think
it's
people.
word salad.
It is, but you know what? We're in that era, Mark, aren't we? People vote on a feeling now. Brexit happened on a feeling for a lot of people, whether they were Remainers or Leavers. There was that feeling. And you think, that's interesting, that because you've got to divorce emotion from these things. But in so many, you see it in America, people, even in this country, how guarded and protective people are over Donald Trump. He's not even our president. You say one thing against him and suddenly somebody wants to end your life and kill your family. And you think, wow, all I've done is having a pop at a politician, which frankly should be something you teach in schools to do.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But,
it's a good point.
It's been bugging me for a while. Yeah. And it's conversations I've had with people on X, and they can never answer it. And I think, well, try and make me see what you see in this party.
And then you can decide for yourself. But until they can give you the kind of workings out, it's almost impossible. It's a cracking point. Mark, thank you for that. We are in that sort of era, and I suppose we were always in it to a point, particularly with Labour and the Tories, when you had the kind of almost only ever two parties, how it's been for since voting was in the modern era, since voting became what it is today and the system we have today. We are in that place, aren't we, where people have, I vote Labour because my granddad voted Labour, I'm a Tory because my mum's a Tory. That's a lot of people already went for that. But the emotional thing is kind of, it's one strand of the world we're living in with social media, isn't it? I mean, I say this a lot about things like Twitter. I mean, if you've got a bit of, if you're a bit intelligent, and I think most of us are at least a bit intelligent, then I have no idea why anybody would go to Twitter as a news source. So I do this for a living. I've only ever worked in newsrooms pretty much all my life, and mostly in national radio. And I'm not qualified in many things, but this one I am qualified in. I know, how news works, how it's put together. I can see its brilliance. I can also see its shortcomings, and I can see sometimes where it lacks to adapting to, different appetites. And I get all of that, but no one will ever tell me that the place where you get the truth, if Twitter is the new media, this is the end of civilization, I promise you. And that's not a cheap point, genuinely. 0344 499 1000. Some sad breaking news. The 3 women who died in the sea off Brighton Beach have now been named. Sussex police said the women who died were Jane Adatoro, 36, Christina Walter, 32, and Rebecca Walter, 31. Of course, this is the story from last Wednesday. Emergency services were called to the beach near Blackrock, the Blackrock car park off Madeira Drive at around about 5:45 in the morning. There was a report of a single person in the water. 2 more bodies were recovered from the sea nearby on arrival. All 3 women were sisters from Uxbridge area of London, according to officers. The force said the next of kin were being supported by specialist officers during this incredibly difficult time. 3 sisters losing their life, getting into difficulties, one assumes. I'm sure there will be further detail on that. But that is truly horrific and very sad, and naturally thoughts are with the family. Let's move back to your calls and comments. Andy Burnham still dominating the headlines. Martin is over here in Nottingham. What are you thinking, Martin? Good afternoon.
Oh, hello. I was going to answer your question from earlier,
Yes.
and ask my own question. The answer earlier was pretty obvious, I think, why he wants to become an MP, because he wants to be Prime Minister. I thought we all knew that. So that's pretty much a given.
No, but wouldn't it be interesting if somebody in a press conference directly tests his interest in that parliamentary seat?
Oh, I see. Yeah,
by asking that question, why do you want to represent the people of Makerfield?
Oh, I see.
And I think if you asked him that, you'd put him in a bit of a pincer movement, wouldn't you? Because is he going to say, because I want to spend my life in this community near where I grew up and everything? He would have to say, because I want a better job.
Yeah, very true. He didn't even grow up around there anyway. If you
Not quite, no, he didn't. No.
But anyway, my question is, I want to keep things simple. Look, the left have said they will do pretty much anything, short of murder to keep out reform. So they're going to make a pact when it comes to it. Can people vote in UKIP and Restore and Advance? Can they not see that they're going to let Labour in and the Greens in by the back door by splitting the right? Is it that difficult for them to understand that, do you think?
Do you know what? Something we haven't talked about a lot today. You've just raised it, Martin, and that is because at the moment I don't think we've got the name of a Green candidate standing. I wonder if they're considering not standing on the very point you just made.
I think so. I think they're going to be better at this come the next general election. I think they're going to be better at sticking together and putting their differences aside. I think anything other than reform is what they want. And I think all this Restore, I think Rupert Lowe might have an awful lot to answer for after the next election, because I do not want to see 5 extra years of the left wing, because I don't think there'll be much left of my country.
I get that feeling as well. Martin, thank you very much indeed. Martin in Nottingham. Really good point. Is that the reason why we're not hearing? I mean, I stand to be corrected if some Green Party candidate has been announced, but there's nothing we're seeing at this end. We'll double check that. But that would be a very smart move from... That said, I don't know how many people in Makerfield would be a Green voter anyway. In that respect, if you look at the last general election on that particular seat, you had, and I had the figures out a second ago. I'll get them, but in terms of the amount of Green votes, it was quite low. I don't think it would be a natural Green constituency, but there would be Labour voters that would have turned to the Greens ordinarily. If the Green don't stand somebody, then those voters will gravitate to Andy Burnham. So you throw that into the equation, then throw into the equation that Restore Britain are likely to put a kink in the door of reform, then Andy Burnham's chances in that seat increase on those 2 particular fronts. And if the Lib Dems don't stand anybody, again, small in their vote, but you end up in that situation where all you do is help out and assist Andy Burnham. We will watch with interest. It's not going to be dull. This one from Marie in Maidstone says, if the government wants to make our shopping cheaper, why don't they drop the VAT on some items like women's sanitary products, baby nappies and baby formula? Just examples. Yeah, fair point. Kev's here. Hello, Kev.
Hi, mate. All right.
All good. Yeah, what's happening?
The trouble with Bournemouth. We did a report yesterday about the rising asylum seeker sex crime crisis in that once genteel South Coast resort. And we got loads of response, and a councillor there got in touch to say, you don't know the half of it. This town is ruined, so we'll be dwelling on poor, benighted